The day Arya Vance married a beggar, the entire frontier called her insane. They had no idea she'd just chosen the most dangerous man alive. This is the story of a woman who lost everything in one brutal night: her love, her family, her future, and made a decision so reckless it should have destroyed her. Instead, it shattered an entire kingdom. If you want to see how a betrayed daughter becomes the queen no one saw coming, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. Let's see where this story reaches tonight. The parlor smelled like expensive perfume and lies. Arya stood in the doorway of her father's study, clutching the edge of the frame so hard her knuckles went white. She'd come to tell him about the new trade routes she'd mapped, routes that could triple their profits in 6 months. Numbers he couldn't ignore. Numbers that would finally make him see her as something other than a decorative problem. But the voices inside stopped her cold. Wedding is already arranged. Her father's voice, flat, final. But Daddy, I thought... That was Serena, her sister. Sweet, delicate Serena, who'd never worked a day in her life, but somehow always got everything she wanted. You thought wrong. Their father, Marcus Vance, freight king of the Ashwood frontier, didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. Lucian Gray has made his choice. He's marrying you next month. Arya's breath caught. Lucian. Her Lucian. And what about Arya? Serena's voice carried that false concern she wore like jewelry. Won't she be upset? Arya, Marcus said, will do what she's told for once in her miserable life. The world tilted. Arya pressed her palm against the doorframe, her carefully prepared presentation forgotten. 3 years. She'd spent 3 years with Lucian Gray, building something real while her father dismissed every business proposal she brought him. 3 years of late nights talking about the future, about partnership, about building an empire together that would make the Vance name untouchable. 3 years of being stupid enough to believe someone actually chose her. Besides, Marcus continued, I've already finalized her arrangement. She'll marry the Harlow boy next week. Wait, the Harlow boy? Serena's shock sounded genuine. Daddy, even for Arya, that's settled. Ice in every syllable. Thomas Harlow needs a wife to legitimize his mining claims. I need his ore contracts. Arya has been useless to this family long enough. At least this way she serves a purpose. Arya's stomach turned over. Thomas Harlow. The man was 47 years old, cruel when he drank, which was often, and already buried 2 wives under suspicious circumstances. Everyone on the frontier knew. No one said anything because Thomas Harlow owned half the copper in 3 territories. Her father was selling her, not arranging a marriage, selling her like livestock. Does she know? Serena asked. She will tomorrow. I expect you'll help her see reason. Of course, Daddy. Arya moved before she could think. Down the hall, out the side door, into the night air that suddenly felt too thin to breathe. Her mind spun in useless circles. Lucian was marrying Serena. Her father was selling her to a killer, and she'd been so focused on proving herself useful that she never saw either betrayal coming. She made it 3 blocks before her legs gave out. The frontier district sprawled around her, warehouses and gambling halls and fight rings where men settled disputes with blood instead of lawyers. This was the part of Ashwood her father pretended didn't exist while making most of his money here. Arya sat on the edge of a broken fountain and tried to remember how to breathe. You all right, miss? She looked up. An old woman stood nearby, shawl wrapped tight against the evening wind. Her face was weathered like canyon stone, eyes sharp despite the wrinkles. I'm fine, Arya lied. The woman's expression said she'd heard better lies from worse liars. You got that look. The one girls get right before they do something real stupid or real smart. Hard to tell which until after. Arya almost laughed. Almost. My father just sold me, she heard herself say, and my fiancé is marrying my sister. So you got betrayed twice in one night. The old woman settled onto the fountain's edge like she had nowhere better to be. That's efficient, at least. Efficient. Arya tasted the word. It was so absurd she did laugh then, sharp and bitter. What are you going to do about it? I don't... Arya stopped. What can I do? My father controls everything. The money, the business, even the house I live in. If I refuse the marriage, he'll cut me off completely. So? So I'll have nothing. You got nothing now, sounds like. The old woman pulled out a cigarette, lit it with practiced ease. Just got a nicer cage around it. The truth of it settled in Arya's chest like a stone. She had nothing. 3 years of business plans her father never read. A fiancé who'd chosen her sister the moment something prettier came along. A future that ended with Thomas Harlow's hands around her throat, one drunk night when she said the wrong thing. Nothing. There's another way, the old woman said quietly. Always is. Just depends how brave you're willing to be. What way? The old woman studied her through cigarette smoke. Frontier law says any woman can choose her own husband if she proposes first. Your daddy can't override it, not legally. Marriage is a contract. Can't force someone into a contract they already signed somewhere else. Arya's mind caught on the idea like fabric on a nail. I'd have to propose to someone else before my father makes it official with Harlow. You'd have to marry someone else, the woman corrected. Proposal ain't enough, needs to be binding, legal, witnessed. But who would... Arya stopped. Who would marry me? I don't have money of my own, can't offer anything. Depends what you're looking for. The old woman pointed toward the fighting rings. That world over there, it runs different. Man's worth ain't in his daddy's name. It's what he can do with his fists and his wits. You want someone your father can't control? Find someone who never bent to authority in the first place. Arya followed the gesture. The rings were rough structures built from salvaged wood and determination. Men fought there for money, territory, pride. The fights were technically illegal, but everyone looked the other way because the ring bosses paid better bribes than anyone complained. You're saying I should propose to a fighter. I'm saying you should propose to the right fighter. The woman stood, brushed ash from her shawl. But you gotta be smart about it. Man's gotta have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Someone desperate enough to say yes to a crazy girl with a crazy plan. And where do I find someone like that? The old woman smiled, but it wasn't kind. Where do you think desperate men end up in a place like this? She walked away before Arya could ask what that meant. Arya spent the next hour watching the fights. She'd never been to the rings before. Her father forbade it, said it was beneath their family. But she'd heard the stories. Blood and broken bones and men who'd rather die than lose. The crowd tonight was thick, shouting and betting while fighters tore into each other with brutal efficiency. Arya pushed through until she found a spot near the rail. The current match ended fast. A massive man with a shaved head knocked his opponent flat with one punch. The crowd roared. Money changed hands. Next up! The ring boss, a woman with scars across her knuckles and a voice like gravel, pointed at someone in the crowd. Draven, you're on deck! Arya's attention sharpened. A man stepped into the ring and the crowd's energy shifted. Not excited, not hostile. Something else. Something that felt like recognition wrapped in contempt. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that hadn't seen a barber in months. His clothes were rough. Worn trousers, a shirt that might have been nice once but now hung on him like he'd lost weight. Mud on his boots, stubble on his jaw. Drunks fighting again, someone near Arya muttered. Waste of time. Easy money, though, another voice answered. He'll go down in under a minute. The man, Draven, stepped into the ring without looking at the crowd. His opponent was the bald man who'd won the last fight, still riding the high of victory. Ready? The ring boss called. The bald man grinned. This'll be quick. Draven said nothing. The fight started. The bald man charged forward, telegraphing a hook that should have ended it. Draven stepped aside, not fast, just precisely, and let the momentum carry his opponent past. The bald man stumbled, recovered, swung again. Draven blocked, countered. A jab that snapped the bald man's head back. The crowd's noise changed. Arya leaned forward. The bald man came in harder, all aggression and power. Draven met him without flinching, every movement minimal but exact. He didn't fight like the others, all rage and recklessness. He fought like someone who'd studied violence until it bored him. 3 moves later, the bald man hit the dirt, unconscious. The crowd went quiet for half a second, then erupted. Draven didn't celebrate, didn't even look pleased. He just collected the small purse the ring boss handed him and started to leave. Wait. Arya didn't recognize her own voice, but she was already moving, already pushing through the crowd, Already doing something so stupid, it circled back to brilliant. She caught up with him at the edge of the ring. I need to talk to you. Draven glanced at her. His eyes were gray, cold as winter stone. Up close, she could see the damage. Old scars on his knuckles, newer bruises on his jaw. He looked like a man who'd been fighting for a long time and stopped caring whether he won. Not interested, he said, and kept walking. I'll pay you. That stopped him. He turned, studied her properly. Took in the expensive dress, the clean hair, the obvious fact that she didn't belong anywhere near this part of town. Pay me for what? Arya's heart hammered. This was insane, reckless, the kind of choice you couldn't take back. She thought about her father's cold dismissal, Lucian's betrayal, Thomas Harlow's hands, the future she'd worked so hard for dissolving like sugar in rain. Nothing to lose, the old woman had said. Marry me, Arya said. The words hung in the air between them like something physical. Draven stared at her. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't blink. Then he laughed, sharp and bitter. You're drunk. I'm desperate. Find someone else. He turned to leave again. There is no one else. Arya grabbed his arm. He could have shaken her off easily, but he didn't. I need a husband before sunrise, or my father marries me off to a man who'll kill me within a year. I can't offer you much, but I can offer you legitimacy. A name. A way into society that doesn't involve getting your skull cracked every night. I don't want any of that. Everyone wants something. She tightened her grip. What do you want? He looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe, or recognition. You don't even know my name, he said. I know you're desperate enough to fight for pocket change. I know you're good enough that you shouldn't have to. And I know... She hesitated, then pushed forward. I know you're smart enough to see an opportunity when it's standing in front of you. This is an opportunity. It's suicide. For which one of us? The question caught him off guard. She saw it in the way his eyes narrowed. Who's your father? He asked. Marcus Vance. Understanding dawned cold and sharp. The Freight King. Yes. So you're the daughter who thinks she's clever enough to run his empire. Not a question, a statement. I've heard about you. That surprised her. You have? Everyone's heard about you. Marcus Vance's eldest daughter, who won't shut up about trade routes and profit margins. The one he wishes was a son. Draven's expression was unreadable. You think marrying a fighter gets you out from under his thumb? I think marrying anyone gets me out from under Thomas Harlow's hands. Everything else, I'll figure out. You're insane. Probably. Arya forced herself to hold his stare. But I'm also right. You need money. I need a husband. We both need a way out of where we are. So here's the deal. Marry me tonight, play the part for 6 months, and I'll pay you enough to disappear wherever you want. New territory, new name, new life. With what money? I have my mother's inheritance. It's not much, but it's mine. My father can't touch it. That was mostly true. The inheritance was tied up in a trust she'd get access to when she married. You'd get half. Draven was quiet for a long time. The crowd noise around them faded to background static. Arya's pulse was so loud she was surprised he couldn't hear it. 6 months, he finally said. 6 months. Then you're free. And in those 6 months, what exactly do you expect from me? Act like my husband in public. Keep my father from dragging me back. Don't get drunk and embarrass me. She paused. And maybe look slightly less like someone who sleeps in alleys. That all? That's all. He studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. You really think this'll work? I think it's the only chance I've got. Another pause, then... Kael. What? My name. It's Kael Draven. Arya Vance. I know. They stood there in the chaos of the fight ring, two desperate people making a deal that would either save them or destroy them completely. Fine, Kael said, but we do this properly, legal, witnessed, can't have your father claiming it's not binding. Agreed. And you're covering the marriage license fee, obviously. Then let's go before you change your mind. Arya almost laughed, as if she had that luxury. But the Frontier Marriage Office was a squat building near the rail yards that stayed open 24 hours for exactly these situations. Desperate people making desperate choices. The clerk barely looked up when they walked in. "Marriage or divorce?" he asked. "Marriage," Arya said. "Names." "Arya Vance, Kyle Draven." That got his attention. His eyes flicked to Arya, recognition dawning. "Vance, as in Marcus Vance?" "Yes." The clerk looked at Kyle, really looked at him, taking in the mud and the bruises and the obvious poverty. His expression said exactly what he thought of this match. "You sure about this, miss?" "I'm sure." "Because once you sign, it's binding. Can't undo it just because you sober up." "I'm not drunk," Arya said firmly. "I'm making a choice." The clerk didn't look convinced, but he pulled out the forms anyway. 15 silver for the license. 20 if you want it witnessed and filed tonight. 20. Arya pulled coins from the small purse she'd grabbed before leaving the house. Her emergency money. She thought she was saving it for business investments. Turned out she was saving it for this. The clerk processed everything with mechanical efficiency. Names, signatures, witness marks from 2 other clerks pulled from the back office, who looked half asleep and deeply uninterested. "Do you, Arya Vance, take this man as your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." "Do you, Kale Draven, take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife?" Kael's gray eyes met hers. For a second she thought he might back out. Run. Disappear into the night and leave her standing there like the fool she probably was. "I do," he said. "Then by the power vested in me by the Frontier Territory Commission, I pronounce you married. Sign here." Arya signed. Her handwriting looked strange, too neat for the moment, like her hand didn't understand the magnitude of what was happening. Kael signed below her. His handwriting was surprisingly elegant. "Congratulations," the clerk said without enthusiasm. "You're legally bound. Try not to kill each other before morning." They walked out into the night as husband and wife. The absurdity of it hit Arya all at once. An hour ago she'd been watching fights. Now she was married to a man she'd spoken to for maybe 10 minutes total. A man who looked like he'd been living rough for months. A man whose last name she'd learned approximately 5 minutes before signing legal documents binding them together. "Where do you live?" Kael asked. "My father's house." "But I can't—" She stopped. Of course she couldn't go back there. Not tonight. Not before she figured out how to tell Marcus Vance his daughter just destroyed every plan he'd made for her. "Right." Kael was quiet for a moment. "I've got a room. Not much, but it's dry. A room. Boarding house, near the South Docks." He must have seen something in her expression because he added, "It's not ideal, but it's private, and your father doesn't know about it." Arya thought about her options. Her father's house, where she'd have to face everything immediately. A hotel, where she'd be recognized. The street. "Lead the way," she said. "Vite." The boarding house was exactly as advertised. Not much, but dry. Kael's room was on the 3rd floor, small and spare. A bed, a chair, a trunk, a window that looked out over the loading docks where ships came in from deeper territories. The bed looked recently used, blankets thrown back like he'd left in a hurry. Arya stood in the doorway, feeling the full weight of what she'd just done. "You can have the bed," Kael said. "I'll take the floor." "You don't have to, she atsa. I'm taking the floor." Not harsh, just final. Arya nodded. She was too tired to argue. Kael pulled a blanket from the trunk, spread it on the floor with the ease of someone who'd done this before. He settled onto it like the hard surface didn't bother him at all. Arya sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing her dress, still trying to process everything. "Why did you say yes?" she asked. In the darkness, she heard him shift. "You offered me money. You didn't ask how much." "Doesn't matter. Any amount is more than I've got now." That's not an answer. Silence stretched between them. "You reminded me of someone," Kael finally said. "Someone who thought she could outrun her father's plans. She was wrong. What happened to her?" "She died." The words settled into the room like stones into water. "I'm sorry," Arya said. "Don't be. It was a long time ago." He was quiet for a moment. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be bad." He was right. Tomorrow she'd have to face her father, tell him what she'd done, watch his fury crack through that controlled exterior. But tonight she was legally married to a stranger, sleeping in a boarding house room that smelled like salt air and old wood, with a future that was completely uncertain for the first time in her life. And somehow, despite everything, Arya felt more in control than she had in years. She lay down without undressing, pulled the thin blanket over herself, and closed her eyes. Across the room, Kael's breathing evened out into something that might have been sleep. Arya stared at the ceiling and wondered what the hell she'd just set in motion. She must have slept because light through the window woke her. Morning, dawn, barely. Kyle was already up, standing by the window looking out at the docks. He'd cleaned up, washed his face at least, run wet hands through his hair. In better light, she could see the sharp angles of his face, the old scars that mapped across his knuckles and disappeared under his sleeves. He looked less like a drunk beggar and more like something else, something harder to categorize. "Your father knows by now," he said without turning. Arya sat up. "How?" "Marriage licenses are public record. Someone from that office sold the information before we made it back here." He glanced at her. "You're Marcus Vance's daughter. That's worth money to the right people." Her stomach dropped. "So he's coming?" "Probably." Arya stood, tried to smooth her wrinkled dress. She looked like she'd spent the night doing exactly what she'd spent the night doing. Nothing, but not in a way anyone would believe. "We need a plan," she said. "You're the one who thinks she's smart." Kael turned from the window. "What's your play?" Arya's mind raced through options, discarding them as fast as they formed. "We go to him, on our terms. Public place where he can't make a scene. He'll make a scene anyway. Then we make a bigger one." An idea was forming, risky, possibly insane, but the only move she could see. "The Merchants' Council meets today. Emergency session about the new tariffs. So everyone who matters will be there. Every major trader, every family with influence." Arya's pulse quickened. "My father won't want to look weak in front of them, won't want to admit his daughter outmaneuvered him." "You think you outmaneuvered him?" "I think I surprised him. That's almost the same thing." Kael studied her with those cold gray eyes. "What do you need from me?" "Play the part. Act like a husband who chose me, not a fighter I hired." She hesitated. "Can you do that?" "Can you?" "Fair question." "I can fake anything for 6 months," Arya said. "Question is whether you can." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "You have no idea what I can fake, princess." The nickname should have annoyed her. Instead, it felt like a test. "Then let's go see what happens when I introduce you to polite society," she said. Kyle grabbed a coat from the trunk, worn but decent, and shrugged it on. It transformed him slightly, made him look less like a fighter and more like someone who might belong in the merchant district. "One condition," he said. "What?" "When this goes bad, and it will go bad, you don't fold, don't apologize, don't try to smooth things over." His expression was hard. "You made this choice. Own it." Arya met his eyes. "I own everything I do." "Good." They left the boarding house together as the frontier woke around them. The walk to the Merchants' Council building took 20 minutes. Arya felt every eye on them. Early workers loading cargo, street vendors setting up, guards changing shifts. Everyone staring at Marcus Vance's daughter, walking beside a man who looked like he'd crawled out of the fight rings. Let them stare. The council building was already busy when they arrived. Merchants in expensive coats arguing about tariffs, clerks rushing between offices, the kind of controlled chaos that happened when money was at stake. Arya walked straight to the main hall where the council met. 2 guards stood at the doors. "Council members only," one said. "My father is a council member," Arya replied. "Marcus Vance. Tell him his daughter is here." The guards exchanged looks. "Just Arya Vance?" one asked carefully. "Arya Draven," she corrected, "and my husband." Both guards stared. "You're Miss Vance, I don't think—" "Tell him," Arya said firmly. "Now." One guard disappeared inside. Kael stood beside her, quiet but present. She could feel the attention shifting to him now. People in the hall noticing, whispering. Marcus Vance's daughter. Married. To him? The guard returned. His face was carefully neutral. Your father will see you, he said. Both of you. The council chamber was exactly as Arya remembered. Polished wood and expensive furniture designed to make people feel small. Long table where the merchant lords sat. Gallery for observers. Currently packed with every important name in Ashwood. Her father stood at the head of the table. Marcus Vance was 53, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet. He'd built an empire from nothing through ruthlessness and strategic brilliance. Everyone respected him. Most feared him. Right now, looking at Arya, his expression was absolutely controlled. That's how she knew he was furious. Arya! His voice carried across the chamber. What an unexpected surprise. Father. She walked forward, Kael beside her. Every eye in the room tracked their movement. I wanted to introduce you to my husband. Silence. Then chaos. The whispers started immediately. Merchants leaning together. Someone laughed, cut off fast. Serena was there too. In the gallery, her face pale with shock. Marcus didn't move. Your husband. Kael Draven. Arya gestured to the man beside her. We were married last night, legal and binding. I see. Her father's eyes moved to Kael, taking him apart piece by piece. And what exactly does Mr. Draven do? He's in private security, Arya said smoothly. The lie came out easier than she expected. Private security? Marcus's tone could have frozen water. How fascinating. I wasn't aware the fighting rings counted as security work these days. So he'd already checked. Of course he had. The rings are how we met, Kael said. His voice cut through the murmurs, deep, level, completely unconcerned by the audience. Marcus's attention sharpened on him. You let my daughter proposition you in a fight ring, Marcus said. That shows remarkably poor judgment. Your daughter showed remarkable determination, Kael replied. I respected it. Respected it enough to take advantage of her obvious distress. Respected it enough to give her a choice. Kael's expression didn't change. Something she wasn't getting from you. The room went dead silent. Nobody talked to Marcus Vance like that. Nobody. Arya's heart hammered, but she kept her face calm. Her father smiled, thin and cold. I see. And what do you want, Mr. Draven? Money? Position? A share of my business in exchange for this farce of a marriage? I want your daughter to choose her own life, Kael said simply. Wrong answer. Arya saw it in the way her father's expression shifted. How noble he... Marcus turned to Arya. And you? You think this changes anything? You married a beggar to avoid Thomas Harlow. Congratulations. You've traded one bad situation for another. I've traded your control for my own choices, Arya said. That's not the same thing at all. Your choices. Her father's laugh was bitter. You have no money, no property, no prospects. Everything you think you own is tied to this family. To me. The moment you walked out, you lost all of it. I have mother's inheritance, which you can't access without my approval until you're 25. Or did you forget that detail? Marcus's smile was cruel now. You're 22, Arya. 3 more years of needing my permission for every penny. How will you live? How will you support this? He gestured at Kael. This mistake you've made. The words hit like punches. Arya had forgotten. In her rush to escape, she'd forgotten the inheritance trust required her father's signature for early access. Without it, she had nothing. The money she'd counted on using to pay Kael, to start over, locked away. Her father saw the realization on her face and pressed harder. Come home, he said. Apologize to Thomas Harlow. Explain this was a momentary lapse in judgment. We'll have the marriage annulled quietly. You'll marry Harlow as planned. And maybe, I'll forget this embarrassment. Every eye in the chamber watched her. This was the moment, the breaking point, where she either folded or committed completely. Arya thought about Lucian choosing Serena, her father's cold dismissal, Thomas Harlow's reputation, the future she'd almost had, property, security, and absolutely no freedom. She thought about the old woman at the fountain asking what she was willing to risk. No, Arya said. Her father's expression went stone cold. No? I'm not coming home. I'm not apologizing, and I'm not annulling anything. Arya straightened. You want to cut me off? Fine. I'll build my own life without your money or your name. With what? Your husband's fight ring earnings? Marcus's contempt was vicious. You won't last a month. Then I'll fail on my own terms instead of suffocating on yours. The chamber was so quiet, Arya could hear her own heartbeat. Marcus stared at her like she was a stranger. You're making a mistake you can't take back. I know. Then you're no longer my daughter. The words should have hurt. Maybe they did, but they also felt like freedom. Understood, Arya said. She turned to leave. Kyle moved with her, silent and steady. They made it to the door before her father spoke again. 1 month, Marcus called after her. 1 month before you come crawling back. I won't be generous when you do. Arya didn't turn around. You won't need to be. I'm not coming back. They walked out together. Behind them, the chamber erupted into chaos. The street outside was bright and normal. People going about their business like Arya's entire life hadn't just imploded in front of Ashwood's elite. She made it half a block before her legs gave out. Kyle caught her before she hit the ground. His hands were surprisingly steady. Easy, he said. Arya couldn't get enough air. I just burned every bridge I had. You freed yourself from a cage. He helped her to a bench. Not the same thing. I have no money, no home, no plan. The reality was crashing down now, sharp and merciless. What did I just do? Something brave or stupid, hard to tell the difference sometimes. Arya laughed, high and slightly hysterical. That's not helping. Wasn't trying to help, was trying to be honest. Kyle sat beside her. You asked me earlier why I said yes to your proposal. You said I reminded you of someone. That wasn't the whole truth. He was quiet for a moment. I said yes because you looked like someone who'd rather burn down the world than let it break you. That's rare. Thought it might be worth seeing what happened. What if I can't do this? The fear came out raw. What if he's right and I fail? Then you fail, but at least you'll fail free. Kale's gray eyes met hers. That's worth something, isn't it? It was. Arya took a breath, then another, forced her mind to work past the panic. We need a place to stay, she said. Your boarding house won't work long term. Too small, too exposed. Agreed. And we need money, real money, not fight ring purses. What are you thinking? Arya's mind turned over possibilities, examining them from every angle. Her father had trained her well despite trying to keep her from the business. She knew trade routes, supply chains, profit margins, knew where opportunities hid in plain sight. The frontier is changing, she said slowly. New territories opening up, trade expanding, but the old merchant families can't adapt fast enough. They're too invested in the old roots. And that leaves gaps. Places where someone small and fast could make money before the big operations notice. She looked at Kyle. We need capital, not much, just enough to start small. We have 0 capital. We have your fight earnings. That's maybe 3 silver, not exactly investment money. It's enough to buy information. An idea was forming, dangerous, probably illegal. Exactly the kind of thing her father would do if he were desperate. There's a merchant, Chenwei, who owes me a favor. Nothing official, just something I helped him with last year. He might front us goods on credit if I can convince him we're good for it. What goods? Spices from the southern territories. They're hard to get right now because of the trade disputes, but I know a route through the western passes that bypasses the checkpoints. If we can move them fast, we can triple our money before anyone notices. Kyle was quiet, processing. That's smuggling. That's trade optimization. It's smuggling. Are you objecting on moral grounds or practical ones? He almost smiled. Just making sure you know what you're proposing. I'm proposing we survive. Everything else is details. Arya stood. Her legs felt steadier now, her mind sharper. Can you ride? She asked. Yes. Good. We'll need horses and supplies. I know someone who might rent to us on credit. Another favor I can call in. She was already planning the route in her head. 3 days to the southern markets, 2 days back if we push hard. We can sell in the eastern district where nobody knows my father's banned me from family business. This could go very wrong, very fast. Yes. Your father will find out eventually. Yes. And if we fail, we'll have nothing. We already have nothing, Arya pointed out. This way at least we're doing something about it. Kael stood, studied her like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. All right, he said. Let's go smuggle some spices. Yeah. Chenwei's shop was in the merchant quarter, wedged between a fabric dealer and a metalworker. Arya had helped him navigate a contract dispute 2 years ago. Nothing her father knew about, just her own curiosity about trade law. The old merchant looked up when they entered, recognition dawning slowly. Miss Vance, he said carefully. I heard rumors. All true. Arya pulled off her gloves. I need a favor, Mr. Chen. A big one. I see. His eyes moved to Kael. And this is? My husband, Kael Draven. Chenwei's expression didn't change, but she saw the calculations happening behind it. Congratulations. How can I help? Arya laid out the proposal, spices on credit, to be paid back with interest within 2 weeks. She kept it professional, detailed, showing she understood the risks. When she finished, Chenwei was silent for a long time. Your father would have my business destroyed if he found out I helped you, he finally said. My father doesn't need to know. He'll find out anyway. He always does. Then you'll tell him I manipulated you, lied, used our past association to force your hand. Arya leaned forward. I'll take the blame. All of it. But please, Mr. Chen, I need this. The old merchant looked between them. Arya desperate and determined, Kael watchful and quiet. 2 weeks, Chenwei said. Full payment plus 15%. If you're late, I report everything to your father myself. Agreed. And you sign a contract, legal and binding. I won't have this come back on me without proof I was legitimate. Of course. Chenwei pulled out papers, drafted terms in his careful handwriting. Arya read every line, negotiated 2 clauses, then signed. Kael signed as witness. The spices will be ready tomorrow morning, Chenwei said. Don't make me regret this, Miss Vance. I won't. They left with a contract that would either save them or destroy them completely. Outside, Kael asked, What now? Now we find those horses, Arya said, and pray this works. The horses cost more than Arya expected. Everything did, she was learning, when you had no leverage and everyone knew you were desperate. The stable master, a grizzled woman named Ruth who'd known Arya since childhood, quoted triple the normal rate for 2 mares and gear. That's robbery, Arya said flatly. That's business. Ruth crossed her arms. Your daddy made it real clear nobody in this district helps you. I rent you horses, I lose every Vance contract I got. So yeah, prices went up. Arya felt Kael shift beside her, but he stayed quiet, watching. What if I pay you back triple? Arya tried. 2 weeks, guaranteed. What if you don't come back at all? Then I'm out horses and money. Ruth shook her head. Cash up front or nothing? They didn't have cash up front. They had maybe 4 silver between them and Chenwei's spices that wouldn't arrive until morning. Arya's mind raced through options. Steal the horses. Too risky. Too traceable. Find another stable. Her father had probably blacklisted her at every legitimate business in Ashwood. Go on foot. Impossible with the amount of goods they needed to move. I'll fight for them, Kael said. Both women turned to stare at him. Excuse me? Ruth asked. Your stable hands. Kael gestured toward the yard where 3 men were loading hay. I'll fight your best one. I win. We get the horses and gear at normal rates. I lose. We walk away. Ruth's expression shifted to interest. You're serious. Dead serious. You're the drunk from the rings. Not a question. Saw you fight last week. You're good, but you're not that good. Try me. Arya grabbed Kael's arm. What are you doing? She hissed. Getting us horses, he said quietly. Trust me. That was asking a lot from someone she'd known less than 24 hours. But they were out of options, and he knew it. Ruth was already grinning. All right, you fight Marcus. She pointed at the largest stable hand, a man who looked like he wrestled bulls for fun. He wins. You both leave and don't come back. You win. Horses at standard rate. Deal? Deal. They shook on it. Yeah, the stable yard cleared fast. Word spread, and within minutes a crowd gathered. Workers from neighboring businesses, people off the street, anyone who wanted to see a fight. Marcus, the stable hand, stripped off his shirt. His chest was a wall of muscle and old scars. He cracked his knuckles and grinned. Nothing personal, he said to Kyle. Just business. Understood. They circled each other in the packed dirt. No rules, no referee, just two men and whatever happened next. Marcus moved first, a testing jab that Kale slipped. Another. A hook that Kale blocked, but the impact drove him back 2 steps. The crowd noise rose. Arya's heart hammered. This was insane. If Kyle lost, they were finished. And Marcus was huge, experienced, clearly knew how to use his size advantage. Marcus pressed forward with a combination that should have ended it. Kyle absorbed the first 2 hits on his guard, ducked the third, and countered with a sharp body shot that made the bigger man grunt. The fight shifted. Kyle wasn't trying to overpower Marcus. He was picking him apart, targeting weak points, wearing him down, making the bigger man work for every inch. It was brutal and efficient and somehow elegant in its violence. 3 minutes in, Marcus was breathing hard. 5 minutes in, he was slowing. 7 minutes in, Kyle caught him with an uppercut that dropped him like a stone. The crowd erupted. Marcus stayed down, conscious but done. His friends rushed to help him up. Ruth stared at Kyle with new respect. Where'd you learn to fight like that? Everywhere that mattered, Kyle said. He wasn't even breathing hard. All right then, Ruth extended her hand. Fair's fair. 2 horses, full gear, standard rates. But I want payment when you get back or those horses belong to me permanent. Agreed. They shook. Arya felt the knot in her chest loosen slightly. One problem solved. About 100 more to go. But Chenway's spices arrived at dawn in unmarked crates. Arya checked every packet: cardamom, saffron, black pepper, cinnamon. Quality goods that would sell fast in the Eastern District, where merchants catered to wealthy clients who didn't care about tariffs or trade disputes. They loaded everything onto the horses while the city woke around them. You know this route? Kyle asked, checking the saddle straps. In theory. Arya had studied maps, talked to traders, memorized the terrain, but she'd never actually ridden it. The Western Pass cuts through Blackstone Canyon. It's rough, but it bypasses 3 checkpoints. We should make the southern markets by tomorrow night if we don't stop. And if someone's watching the pass, then we improvise. Kale's expression said he'd heard better plans, but he swung into the saddle anyway. They rode out as the sun broke over Ashwood's skyline. The city gave way to scrubland, then hills, then the rough country where civilization thinned to scattered homesteads and wandering traders. The Western Pass was a smuggler's route. Everyone knew it, nobody talked about it, and the territorial guards looked the other way for the right price. Except Arya didn't have money for bribes. They pushed hard, stopping only to water the horses and check the cargo. The landscape was harsh, red rock and thorny brush and heat that climbed with the sun. Arya's dress was completely impractical for riding. Within an hour, her legs ached. Within 3, her back screamed. She didn't complain. Kale set a punishing pace, but he watched her carefully, reading her exhaustion in ways she tried to hide. We can rest, he offered around midday. We can't afford to. You're going to fall out of the saddle. Then catch me. Arya forced a smile. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. Everything hurt. But pain was just information, and she could ignore information. They kept riding. Blackstone Canyon opened ahead of them like a wound in the earth, steep walls, narrow passage, shadows that never lifted even in full sun. The pass cut through it, barely wide enough for 2 horses. Stay close, Kyle said. This is ambush country. Arya's hand moved to the knife she'd strapped to her belt that morning. She'd never used it in a fight, but the weight was reassuring. They entered the canyon. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in the shade. Their horses' hooves echoed off stone walls. Arya's nerves pulled tight, every shadow suddenly suspect. They made it halfway through before the riders appeared, 4 of them, blocking the path ahead, armed. Professional. Well, look at this, the lead writer said. He was lean and scarred, with the kind of smile that meant trouble. 2 travelers in Blackstone without an escort. That's dangerous. Arya's pulse spiked. We're just passing through. Sure you are, with those loaded packs. The man gestured at their cargo. What are you hauling? Trade goods, legal merchandise. Then you won't mind if we inspect it. Actually, we would mind. Kale's voice cut through the tension. We're on a schedule. The lead writer's attention shifted to him. Recognition flickered. I know you. You're that fighter from Ashwood, Draven. That's right. Heard you went soft, married some merchant's daughter, and disappeared. The man's grin widened. Guess the rumors were true. Guess so? So what's Marcus Vance's girl doing smuggling spices through Blackstone? The question was directed at Arya now. Daddy cut you off? She didn't answer. I'll take that as a yes. The lead rider urged his horse forward. Here's how this works. You pay the toll, you pass through. You don't pay, we take the cargo and you walk back to Ashwood empty-handed. How much? Arya asked. Half your load. That's not a toll, that's theft. Call it what you want, those are the terms. Arya's mind calculated fast. Half the cargo meant they couldn't make enough profit to pay Chenwei back. They'd be ruined before they started. No deal, she said. The riders laughed. You don't get to negotiate, sweetheart. This is Blackstone. We own this pass. The lead rider's hand moved to his weapon, a machete strapped to his saddle. Now unload half those packs or we take all of it. Touch our cargo and you'll regret it, Kael said quietly. The temperature in the canyon seemed to drop. That a threat? The lead rider asked. That's a promise. The 4 riders spread out, hands moving to weapons. Arya's horse shifted nervously beneath her. This was going to get bloody. Last chance, the lead rider said. Half the cargo, now. Kael's response was to dismount in one smooth motion. The lead rider blinked. What are you doing? Giving you a choice. Kael's voice was perfectly calm. You can ride away now and live, or you can try to take our cargo and see what happens. There's 4 of us. I know. The certainty in those 2 words made the riders hesitate. Arya saw the moment they decided to call his bluff. The lead rider drew his machete and charged. Kael moved. What happened next was hard to follow. Kael caught the machete strike on his forearm. He'd wrapped his coat around it like a guard, twisted, yanked the rider off his horse. The man hit the ground hard. Kael had the machete before he could recover. The second rider came in fast. Kael threw the machete. It buried itself in the canyon wall inches from the man's head. The message was clear. I could have killed you. The rider froze. The 3rd and 4th riders exchanged looks, suddenly less confident. Kael stood in the center of the pass, unarmed but radiating controlled violence. Anyone else? Silence. The lead rider scrambled to his feet, backing toward his horse. You're insane. I'm motivated. Different thing. Kael's gray eyes were ice. Now get out of my way. They left, fast. Arya sat frozen in her saddle, heart pounding, trying to process what she'd just witnessed. Kael retrieved the machete, tossed it aside, and remounted his horse like nothing happened. Let's go, he said. They might come back with friends. Arya urged her horse forward, her mind racing. Who are you? Your husband, remember? Don't be cute. Nobody fights like that. Nobody moves like that. She stared at him. What aren't you telling me? Kael was quiet for a long moment as they rode. I used to be someone else, he finally said. Someone who knew how to hurt people efficiently. That person is gone now, but the skills stayed. Used to be someone else where? Doesn't matter. That life ended a long time ago. It clearly mattered, but Arya knew when to push and when to wait. She filed the information away. Another piece of the puzzle that was Kael Draven. They rode in silence until the canyon opened into scrubland again. The southern markets sprawled across a valley where 3 territories met, neutral ground where traders came to buy and sell without tariffs or politics interfering. Arya had been here once with her father years ago. It hadn't changed much. Same chaos, same energy, same desperate edge to every transaction. They arrived after dark, exhausted and covered in trail dust. Find us a place to sleep, Arya said, sliding off her horse. Her legs nearly buckled. I'll scout buyers. You should rest. I should sell these spices before anyone realizes Marcus Vance's daughter is operating in his territory. She steadied herself against the horse. We don't have time for rest. Kyle looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't. 1 hour, then I'm coming to find you. Fine. The market was loud and crowded even this late. Arya moved through it with purpose, tracking down the merchants she remembered, the ones who dealt in luxury goods, who catered to clients with money and no questions. She found her target in a spice merchant's stall near the center, an older woman named Sana, who'd once complimented Arya's negotiation skills. I need to move product, Arya said without preamble. Quality goods, fair prices, fast transaction. Sana looked her over, the dirty dress, the exhaustion, the desperation poorly hidden. Marcus Vance's daughter, heard you got yourself in trouble. Heard wrong, I got myself free. That what you call it? But Sana's eyes showed interest. What are you selling? Arya laid out samples. Sana examined each one with expert hands, testing texture and smell. These are good, she admitted. Where'd you source them? Does it matter? Might, if they're stolen. They're legitimate. I have documentation. Arya pulled out Chenwei's papers. Bought on credit, mine to sell. Sana studied the documents, then Arya. Your father know you're here? My father doesn't control me anymore. Sana's expression was unreadable. I'll give you 60 silver for the lot. Arya's heart sank. These are worth at least 90. To someone with your father's name backing them, sure. To a girl operating alone with no protection, 60's generous. It was an insult. It was also probably the best offer Arya would get. She thought about walking away, finding another buyer. But time was burning, and every hour in the market was another hour someone might recognize her and report back to Marcus. 70? Arya countered. And you don't mention this transaction to anyone. 65. And I keep quiet for 1 month. Deal. They shook on it. The transaction took 20 minutes. Sana's people loaded the spices while Arya counted the money 3 times to be sure. 65 silver. More than she'd ever held in her life. Less than she needed. She found Kyle at a boarding house on the market's edge. We got 65, she said, collapsing onto the room's single bed. Everything hurt. Her back, her legs, her pride. Kale looked up from where he was examining a map. That's not enough. I know. Chenwei wanted payment plus 15%. That's 83 silver. I can do math. Arya pressed her palms against her eyes. We're 18 short. So we need another run. We don't have time for another run. We have 12 days before Chenwei expects payment. She sat up, forced her brain to work through exhaustion. We need a different approach. What approach? I don't know yet. The honesty hung between them. Outside, the market noise continued, deals being made, fortunes changing hands, people building futures or destroying them in single transactions. Get some sleep, Kyle said. We'll figure it out in the morning. Arya wanted to argue that they couldn't afford sleep, but her body had other ideas. She was unconscious, within minutes. She woke to voices. Kael's, low and controlled. Someone else's. Male, unfamiliar, angry. Arya sat up fast. Dawn light filtered through the window. She'd slept maybe 4 hours. The voices came from outside the door. Told you to stay away from the southern markets. The stranger's voice. This is our territory. Since when? Kael asked. Since we bought off the territorial council. Every merchant here pays us or they don't sell. Simple. We already sold. A pause. Then you pay retroactive fees, 30% of gross. Arya was on her feet, moving to the door. She opened it to find Kyle facing 3 men in the narrow hallway. The speaker was young, maybe 25, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Who are you? Arya demanded. The young man's attention shifted to her. His expression changed, recognition, then calculation. Well, Marcus Vance's runaway daughter. This is interesting. Her stomach dropped. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. He smiled. Word travels fast out here. You married some fighter, your daddy disowned you. Now you're trying to play merchant on your own. He gestured at Kyle. This the husband? Arya didn't answer. Doesn't matter. Point is, you sold in our market without permission. That's a problem. We didn't know we needed permission, Arya said carefully. Ignorance doesn't exempt you from fees. The young man crossed his arms. 30%. Call it 20 silver, given your current circumstances. 20 silver. Nearly a third of what they'd made. We don't have 20 silver to spare, Arya said. Then you have a problem. We'll pay, Kael cut in before Arya could argue. But we need proof this is legitimate. Show us your authority documents. The young man laughed. Authority documents. You think this is official? So you're just thieves. We're businessmen protecting our interests. The smile vanished. And you're going to pay us? Or we're going to take it by force? Your choice. Kael's expression didn't change, but Arya felt the shift in his stance. He was getting ready to fight, 3 against 1, in a narrow hallway, with her exhausted and unarmed. Wait, Arya said quickly. Let's negotiate. Nothing to negotiate. There's always something to negotiate. She stepped forward, putting herself between Kael and the strangers. Risky. Possibly stupid. You want 20 silver. We can't give you that. But I can give you information. The young man's interest sharpened. What information? Trade routes, supply contacts, ways to move goods that bypass the usual checkpoints. Arya's mind raced. I spent 3 years learning my father's business. I know things that could make you a lot more than 20 silver. Or you could be lying. Or I could be telling the truth, and you could be smart enough to recognize an opportunity. The young man studied her. What's your angle? My angle is survival. I need to make money. You need to expand your operation. We help each other. By doing what exactly? I'll consult. Give you insights into how the major merchants operate, where their weaknesses are, which routes they're not watching. Arya kept her voice level. 6 months of information in exchange for wiping our debt and cutting us in on future profits. It was insane. She was offering to betray everything her father taught her to criminals, who probably wouldn't honor any agreement. But she was out of options. The young man glanced at his companions. Some silent communication passed between them. 1 month, he said. You give us solid intel for 1 month. If it pans out, we talk percentages. If it doesn't, you pay us 40 silver. Deal? 40 silver if she failed. More than they had. More than they could make. Deal, Arya heard herself say. They shook on it. The men left. Kyle waited until their footsteps faded, then turned to her. What did you just do? Bought us time. You just agreed to work with criminals. I agreed to survive. Arya's hands were shaking. She clasped them together. We couldn't fight them. We couldn't pay them. This was the only option. There's always another option. Name one. Kael was quiet. That's what I thought. Arya moved to the window, stared out at the waking market. My father built his fortune doing exactly this, finding leverage wherever he could, using people's weaknesses against them, making deals that benefited him first and everyone else maybe. I swore I'd never be like him. But here I am. You're nothing like your father. How do you know? You've known me 2 days. I know you're trying to build something instead of taking from others. That's different. Kael moved to stand beside her. Your father takes what he wants and calls it business. You're negotiating because you have to. Not the same thing. Arya wanted to believe that, but the line between necessity and ruthlessness was thinner than she'd thought. We should leave, she said. Get back to Ashwood before these people change their minds. Agreed. They packed fast and were on the road within the hour. The ride back was quieter. Arya's mind churned through possibilities. What information she could give that would satisfy the market gang without completely betraying her former life. What lines she wouldn't cross. How long she could maintain this balancing act before something broke. They stopped once to rest the horses and eat stale bread Kael had bought at the market. You said you used to be someone else, Arya said into the silence. Someone who knew how to hurt people. Kael didn't look up from checking the saddle straps. I need to know who I'm working with, she continued. Who I married, because right now you're a stranger who fights too well and knows too much and won't give me a straight answer about anything. Would it change anything if you knew? Maybe. Then maybe you're better off not knowing. That's not your choice to make. Kyle finished with the saddle, turned to face her. His expression was guarded. I was a soldier, elite unit. We did things that needed doing in places nobody talks about. When my term ended, I tried to go home. Found out home didn't exist anymore. So I drifted. Fought for money because it was the only thing I knew how to do. What happened to your home? Burned, along with everyone in it. His voice was flat. I wasn't there. Should have been. Wasn't. The weight of it settled between them. I'm sorry, Arya said. Don't be. It was a long time ago. Kyle swung back into his saddle. Point is, I'm good at violence because I was trained to be, but that doesn't mean I want to be that person anymore. Then who do you want to be? He looked at her for a long moment. I'm still figuring that out. They rode in silence after that. The frontier landscape rolled past, scrubland giving way to hills, hills to the outskirts of Ashwood. Home. Except it wasn't home anymore. Arya had burned that bridge along with every other certainty in her life. They reached the city as the sun set, painting the buildings in shades of orange and blood. We need to report to Chen Wei, Arya said. Show him we're making progress. With what? We're still short. I'll figure something out. Chen Wei's shop was closed when they arrived, but the old merchant was inside, going over ledgers by lamplight. He looked up when they entered, expression carefully neutral. Miss Vance, Mr. Draven. He set down his pen. You're back sooner than I expected. We made a sale, Arya said. 65 silver. Here. She placed the money on the counter. Chen Wei counted it slowly. This is not the agreed amount. I know, we ran into complications, but I have a plan to make up the difference. Plans don't pay debts. This one will. I just need more time. You have 9 days, Miss Vance. Not more time. 9 days. Chen Wei's expression hardened. I took a significant risk helping you. If you default, I lose more than money. I lose credibility. Do you understand? I understand. Then make sure you deliver. He slid the money back across the counter. Keep this. Bring me the full amount plus interest in 9 days or don't come back at all. It was both a gift and a warning. They left with 65 silver and 9 days to find 18 more. The boarding house room felt smaller than before. Cramped. Suffocating. Arya paced while Kyle sat by the window, watching the street. We could rob someone, she said, only half joking. No. Gamble it? With what stake? Sell the horses. Then how do we make future runs? Arya stopped pacing. I don't know. Her voice cracked. I don't know what to do. The admission cost her. She'd spent her whole life having answers, having plans, knowing exactly what needed to happen next. This freefall was terrifying. Kael stood, crossed to where she'd frozen in the center of the room. We'll figure it out, he said quietly. How? We have 9 days and no options. We have options. We just haven't thought of them yet. His hand settled on her shoulder, steady, grounding. You got us this far. You'll get us further. What if I can't? Then we fail together instead of you failing alone. That's what marriage means, right? It shouldn't have been funny, but Arya laughed anyway, sharp and slightly hysterical. This is the worst marriage in history, she said. Probably. Kael's expression softened almost imperceptibly. But it's ours. The moment stretched between them. Then someone knocked on the door. They both tensed. Kyle moved to answer it while Arya's hand found her knife. A boy stood in the hallway, maybe 12, street-worn and wary. Message for Arya Draven, he said, holding out a sealed envelope. Arya took it, handed the boy a copper. He disappeared fast. The envelope was expensive paper, quality seal. She broke it open. Inside was a single card with elegant handwriting. Your father isn't the only one who knows about trade routes. If you want to make real money, meet me at the Gilded Compass tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Arya read it twice. What is it? Kael asked. She handed him the card. I don't know, but I think someone just offered us a lifeline. Or a trap. Maybe both. They stared at the card like it might reveal more secrets. Outside, the city settled into night. 9 days until their debt came due. 9 days to figure out who M was and whether they were salvation or destruction. Arya folded the card carefully and tucked it into her pocket. Tomorrow, she said. We find out which. The Gilded Compass sat in Ashwood's financial district like a jewel among stones. 3 stories of polished wood and stained glass where the real power players made deals that moved territories. Arya had been inside exactly once when her father brought her to demonstrate what she'd never be allowed to touch. Now she was walking through the front door, like she belonged there. The doorman barely glanced at her. Inside, the main floor hummed with quiet conversation. Merchants, bankers, territory officials, all speaking in low voices about money and influence. Crystal chandeliers threw soft light across dark wood tables. Everything smelled like expensive tobacco and older money. Arya scanned the room, looking for anyone who might be M. Miss Vance. She turned. A woman stood near the bar, mid-30s, striking rather than beautiful, dressed in deep blue silk that probably cost more than Arya's entire wardrobe. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe style that emphasized sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes. I'm Mira Castellan, the woman said. Thank you for coming. Arya knew that name. Everyone did. Mira Castellan ran the largest private trading company in 3 territories. She'd built it from nothing in less than a decade through ruthless efficiency and an uncanny ability to predict market shifts before they happened. You sent the card, Arya said. I did. Shall we? Mira gestured toward a private booth in the back. They settled into leather seats. A server appeared with wine, expensive, judging by the label. Arya didn't touch hers. You're wondering why I contacted you, Mira said, among other things. I'll be direct. Your father made a mistake cutting you off. You have a good mind for trade, and you're willing to take risks. Those are rare qualities. Mira sipped her wine. I'd like to offer you a job. Arya's pulse quickened. What kind of job? Route planner, contract negotiator. The official title doesn't matter. What matters is I need someone who understands the frontier markets and isn't afraid to operate in gray areas. Mira's smile was sharp. I hear you've already started doing exactly that. So word had traveled. Fast. What's the pay? Arya asked. 30 silver a month to start. More if you prove valuable. Plus a percentage of profits on any deals you broker. Mira leaned back. It's enough to pay off whatever debts you've accumulated and start building real capital. It was more money than Arya had ever imagined making on her own. It was safety, security, a way forward that didn't involve scrambling for every copper. It was also too good to be true. What's the catch? Arya asked. Smart girl. Mira's expression didn't change. The catch is you work exclusively for me. No side deals, no freelancing, and you cut all ties with your husband. The words hit like cold water. Excuse me? Kyle Draven is a liability. He's a fighter with a questionable past and no social standing. If you want to operate in my world, you need to look legitimate. That means ending the marriage. Arya's mind raced. This was everything she'd wanted. Independence, income, respect in the trading community. All she had to do was walk away from a man she'd known less than a week. A marriage that was supposed to be temporary anyway. Why do you care who I'm married to? She asked. Because I care about perception. My employees represent my company. I can't have them associated with street fighters and questionable decisions. Mira's tone was matter-of-fact. It's business, nothing personal. And if I refuse, then you're on your own. I withdraw the offer and you continue scrambling to survive. Mira studied her. But you won't refuse. You're too smart for that. You know this is your best option. It was her best option. It was also wrong in ways Arya couldn't quite articulate. I need time to think, she said. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, I find someone else. Mira stood smoothly. I'll be here at 9. Come with your answer. She left without waiting for a response. Arya sat alone in the booth, staring at her untouched wine. 30 silver a month. Real work. A future that didn't involve constant desperation. All she had to do was abandon the man who'd said yes when she had nothing to offer. She found Kyle at the boarding house, cleaning weapons he'd apparently acquired from somewhere. A knife, a short sword, both well-maintained. How'd it go? He asked without looking up. Arya closed the door, leaned against it. She offered me a job. That's good. 30 silver a month, percentage of profits, legitimate work with the biggest trading company in the territories. Kael's hand stilled on the blade he was sharpening. What's the price? I have to end our marriage. The silence stretched thin and dangerous. I see, Kael said finally. She says you're a liability, says I can't work for her while I'm associated with a fighter who has no standing. She's not wrong. Don't do that. Do what? Agree with her like this doesn't matter. Arya pushed off the door. This is our arrangement. 6 months. We both agreed. We agreed before you had better options. Kael set down the blade, met her eyes. This is a good offer, Arya. You should take it. Just like that? Just like that. What about Chen Wei? What about the debt? I'll figure something out. How? The way I always have. Fighting, working, surviving. His expression was unreadable. You don't owe me anything. We made a deal because we were both desperate. You're not desperate anymore. That changes things. It should have been a relief. He was giving her an easy out. No guilt, no complications. Instead, it felt like betrayal. What if I don't want to take it? Arya heard herself say. Kael's eyes narrowed. Why wouldn't you? Because it feels like running, like I'm doing exactly what everyone expects, choosing the safe path over the hard one. There's nothing wrong with choosing safety. There is, if it means abandoning the people who helped me when no one else would. She crossed her arms. You married me when I had nothing, fought for horses so we could make that first run, stood between me and those men in Blackstone. Now I'm supposed to just walk away because someone offers me money? That's exactly what you're supposed to do. It's called smart business. It's called being my father. The words landed hard. Kael stood, moved to the window. His shoulders were tight with tension. Your father takes what he wants and destroys people who get in his way. You're trying to build something. Those aren't the same thing, aren't they? I'd be using you, taking what I needed from this marriage and then discarding you when something better came along. How is that different? Because I knew what this was from the start. Kael's voice was rough. You told me 6 months. You told me it was temporary. Nothing's changed except you found a faster exit. Everything's changed. Arya's frustration boiled over. I thought this was just a transaction, a way to escape. But you've been... She stopped, not sure how to finish the sentence. Been what? Real. You've been real about this when you could have just gone through the motions. She forced herself to meet his eyes. And I don't want to repay that by walking away the second it's convenient. Kael stared at her for a long moment. You're making this complicated, he said finally. Maybe it should be complicated. Why? Because people should be complicated. Relationships should be complicated. Nothing worth doing is simple. That's naive. That's honest. The argument hung between them like smoke. Finally, Kael turned away. Do what you want, Arya. Take the job. Don't take the job. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. That's not helpful. I'm not trying to be helpful. I'm trying to be honest. He grabbed his coat. I need air. He left before she could respond. Arya stood alone in the empty room, her mind spinning. She had until morning to decide. Job or marriage? Security or uncertainty? The smart choice or the right one, if she even knew which was which anymore. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she walked the city, trying to think. The frontier district was alive even in the small hours. Fights in the rings, deals in the alleys, people building lives in the spaces between legal and not. This was where she'd met Kael, where she'd made the desperate choice that started everything. Was Mira right? Was he a liability? Or was that just another version of her father's voice telling her she couldn't trust her own judgment? Arya found herself at the old fountain where the strange woman had given her advice days ago. The woman wasn't there now, just empty stone and running water. You look lost. Arya spun. Serena stood in the shadows, wrapped in an expensive shawl. What are you doing here? Arya demanded. Looking for you. I heard you were in the district. Serena stepped into the lamplight. She looked tired, older somehow. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Maybe not, but I have things to say to you. Serena sat on the fountain's edge. I'm sorry. Arya laughed bitterly. For what? Stealing my fiancé? Helping father sell me to Harlow? Which part are you sorry for? All of it. Serena's voice was quiet. I knew about Lucian. I knew he was yours. But when he came to me, when he said he wanted me instead, I didn't stop it. I should have. I didn't. Why are you telling me this now? Because I made a mistake. Serena looked up and her eyes were wet. Lucian married me last week. Father arranged everything perfectly. Big ceremony, all the right people. It should have been everything I wanted. And? And he's horrible, Arya. He's cruel and controlling and nothing like what I thought. Serena's hands twisted in her lap. He only wanted me to hurt you, to prove he could take something you valued. Now I'm trapped in a marriage with a man who doesn't love me, and father won't let me leave because it would embarrass him. Part of Arya wanted to feel vindicated, wanted to say she deserved this, but mostly she just felt tired. Why are you telling me this? She asked again. Because you got out. You made an insane choice and everyone said you were wrong, but you got out. Serena stood. I should have been braver. Should have made my own choices instead of letting father decide everything. Now it's too late. It's never too late. It is for me, but not for you. Serena pulled an envelope from her shawl. This is from father. He's planning something. I don't know what exactly, but I heard him talking to Thomas Harlow. They're going to move against you, soon. Arya took the envelope. Inside was a legal document, dense text, official seals. What is this? Contract enforcement papers. Father's claiming you owe him compensation for breach of marriage contract with Harlow. He's going to sue you for damages. Serena's expression was grim. If he wins, he can seize any assets you have and force you into indentured service to pay the debt. Arya's blood went cold. He can't do that. He can if he has the right judge, and he has 3 judges on his payroll. Serena backed toward the shadows. I shouldn't be here. If father finds out I warned you, thank you, Arya said. Serena paused. I really am sorry, Arya, for everything. Then she was gone. Arya stared at the legal papers. Her father wasn't going to let her go. Wasn't going to let her build a life outside his control. He was going to destroy her legally, systematically, completely, unless she found a way to stop him. Dawn found her back at the boarding house. Cale was there, packing his few belongings into a worn bag. What are you doing? Arya asked. Making it easier. You take Mira's job, I disappear for a while. Gives you clean distance from the marriage without messy annulment paperwork. Stop packing. Arya, stop. She crossed to him, grabbed the bag from his hands. I'm not taking the job. Kael went very still. Why not? Because I have a bigger problem now. She showed him the legal papers. My father's suing me for breach of contract. If he wins, he can take everything and force me into servitude. I'll be trapped worse than before. Kael scanned the documents, his expression darkening. This is brutal. It's my father. Brutal is his default. Arya took the papers back. But it also means I can't just take Mira's job and pretend everything's fine. I need to fight this. And I can't do that alone. What are you asking? I'm asking if you'll stay. Not because of our arrangement, not because you owe me anything. She forced herself to meet his eyes. But because I need someone who isn't afraid of my father and won't run when things get bad. Things are already bad. They're going to get worse. Kael studied her for a long moment. If I stay, this stops being a 6-month arrangement. You understand that? Once we're in this fight together, there's no easy exit. I know. And you're sure, because Mira's offer was good, safe, smart. I'm sure. Arya's voice steadied. I'm done running from my father, done letting him control my choices. If he wants a fight, I'll give him one. Something shifted in Kael's expression. All right then. What's the plan? I don't have one yet, but I know someone who might. Chenwei's shop was closed, but Arya pounded on the door until the old merchant appeared, irritated and suspicious. Miss Vance, it's barely dawn. I need your help, not trade goods, information. Arya pushed past him into the shop. My father's coming after me legally. I need to know who his allies are. which judges he owns, what leverage he has. Chen Wei's expression sharpened. That's dangerous information. Everything about my life is dangerous right now. She pulled out 30 silver, nearly half their remaining money. I'll pay. The old merchant looked at the coins, then at her. Your father has 3 judges in his pocket. Judge Morrison handles contract disputes. That's who'll hear your case. Judge Hale controls property seizures. Judge Reeves manages debt enforcement. He counted on his fingers. All 3 receive monthly payments through a shell company your father controls. How do you know this? Because I used to receive payments through the same company. Before I decided I preferred clean business. Chen Wei's smile was thin. Your father buys loyalty. It's effective. Can I prove it? Prove what? That he pays them? No. It's all perfectly legal. Consulting fees, they call it. The merchant shook his head. You won't beat him in court, Miss Vance. The system's rigged. Arya's stomach sank. Then what do I do? Change the game. Don't fight him where he's strong. Find where he's weak and strike there. Where is he weak? That's what you need to figure out. Arya left with less money and no clear answers, but at least she knew the battlefield. The next 3 days blurred together in desperate planning. Arya dug through everything she knew about her father's business, looking for vulnerabilities. Kyle worked his contacts in the fighting rings and gambling halls, gathering information about Marcus Vance's operations in the frontier's shadier districts. What they found was discouraging. Her father was careful, ruthless. Every business dealing was technically legal, even when it walked the knife's edge of ethics. Except one. Look at this, Kyle said on the 4th night, spreading papers across their room's small table. Your father owns 3 shipping warehouses near the docks. Official records say they store textiles and grain. So I know someone who worked there. Says they move other things through those warehouses. Things that don't appear on any manifest. Arya's pulse quickened. What things? Weapons. Raw ore from unauthorized mines. Occasionally people who don't want border crossings documented. Kale tapped the papers. It's smuggling, organized and profitable. If we could prove it, we could ruin him. Kale's expression was grim. But getting proof means getting inside those warehouses. They're guarded, locked down. Your father's not sloppy. There has to be a way. There might be. Kale pulled out another document, a schedule. Once a month, they do a full inventory changeover. Empty the warehouses completely. Bring in new stock, update all the records. It's the only time the security is light because they need workers moving in and out constantly. When's the next changeover? Tomorrow night. Arya's mind raced. We could get in with the workers, document what's actually being stored, get out before anyone notices. That's insane. You have a better idea? No. Which is why I said it's insane, not wrong. Kale met her eyes. If we get caught, your father won't just sue you. He'll destroy you completely, possibly literally. And if we do nothing, he destroys me legally. At least this way I'm fighting back. Kale was quiet for a long moment. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The docks at night were a different world, fog rolling off the water, shadows deep enough to hide anything, the sounds of ships and workers creating constant background noise. Arya and Kyle joined the stream of day laborers heading toward her father's warehouses. She'd dressed down, rough clothes, hair hidden under a cap, dirt smudged on her face. Kale stayed close, another anonymous worker in the crowd. The warehouse was massive, 3 stories of storage space, loading docks on both sides, guards at the main entrance checking papers. Stay with the group, Kyle murmured. Don't draw attention. They shuffled through the security check. The guard barely glanced at them, dozens of workers flooding in, everyone exhausted and focused on finishing the night's work. Inside the warehouse was organized chaos. Crates being moved, inventories checked, foremen shouting directions. Arya scanned the space, looking for anything that seemed wrong. Everything looked legitimate. This way, Kyle said quietly. He led her toward the back, where older crates sat stacked against the wall. These were dusty, unmarked, clearly sitting here longer than normal inventory. Kyle pried one open while Arya kept watch. Inside were weapons, military-grade rifles, ammunition, grenades. All illegal for civilian transport without special permits. Get proof, Arya whispered. She pulled out the small camera she'd borrowed and started documenting. Serial numbers, quantities, everything that would prove this wasn't legal storage. Hey, what are you doing back here? Arya spun. A foreman was striding toward them, face twisted with suspicion. Just checking inventory, Kyle said smoothly. Boss said to verify the back stock. What boss? I didn't authorize anyone. The foreman's eyes narrowed. I know you. You're that fighter, Draven. Arya's heart stopped. And you? The foreman turned to her. Recognition dawned. Marcus Vance's daughter. What the hell? He reached for the alarm on his belt. Kale moved first. He closed the distance before the foreman could react, got a hand over the man's mouth, drove him back against the crates. Don't, Kale said quietly. Just walk away. The foreman's eyes were wide with panic. He mumbled something against Kale's palm. If I let you go, you stay quiet. Understand? The foreman nodded frantically. Kyle released him. The foreman backed away 3 steps, then ran for the alarm anyway. Go! Kale grabbed Arya's arm. They ran. Behind them, the alarm blared. Shouts erupted. The warehouse transformed from organized chaos to actual chaos as guards scrambled to respond. Arya and Kyle pushed through the crowd of confused workers, heading for the exit. The main entrance was already locked down, guards blocking it, checking everyone leaving. Side door, Kyle said. They veered toward a smaller entrance on the west side. It was open, barely. A guard was moving to close it. Kale hit him with a shoulder check that sent the man sprawling. They burst through into the night air. More shouts behind them, footsteps pounding. The docks stretched ahead, piers and ships and too much open ground. They'd be seen immediately. Water, Kale said. What? Trust me. He pulled her toward the edge of the dock. Arya understood a second before they jumped. The water hit like ice, dark and filthy and shocking. Arya gasped, went under, kicked back to the surface. Kale was beside her, already swimming toward the pilings beneath the next pier. They hauled themselves into the shadows under the dock, pressed against the wooden supports, breathing hard. Above, guards ran past, searching, shouting. Arya clutched the camera to her chest, praying it was waterproof enough to survive. They stayed hidden for an hour, waiting, listening, until the searches moved on. Finally, Kyle whispered, We need to move. Can you swim? Do I have a choice? Not really. They swam along the pier supports, staying in shadow, moving slow to avoid splashing. 3 piers down, they found a ladder. Hauled themselves up, stumbled onto a loading platform that was blessedly deserted. Arya collapsed, shaking from cold and adrenaline. Kale checked the camera. It survived. Did you get enough? I think so. Then we go. Now, before someone realizes where we went. They limped back toward the boarding house, soaked and exhausted and carrying evidence that could destroy Marcus Vance, if they lived long enough to use it. Well, the next morning, Arya developed the photographs in a dark room she borrowed from a sympathetic printer. The images were clear. Weapons, serial numbers, everything illegal about her father's operation documented in black and white. What now? Kyle asked. Now we go public. Arya's hands shook slightly as she organized the photos. We take this to the Territorial Council, force an investigation. My father can own 3 judges, but he can't own the whole territory. He can try. Then we make enough noise that trying costs him more than letting me go. It was a gamble, a huge one, but Arya was out of safe options. She dressed in her least ruined clothes, gathered the evidence, and headed for the territorial offices with Kyle beside her. The council building was impressive, marble and flags, built to remind everyone who really controlled the frontier. Arya had been here once before, watching her father negotiate contracts like a general moving armies. Now she was the one demanding an audience. The clerk at the front desk looked skeptical. The council is in session. You can't just tell them Marcus Vance's daughter is here with evidence of criminal smuggling operations. They'll make time. The clerk's eyes widened. She disappeared into the back. 5 minutes later, Arya and Kyle were being ushered into a meeting room where 5 council members sat looking various shades of interested and irritated. Councillor Reeves, an older woman with steel gray hair, spoke first. Miss Vance, This is highly irregular. What I have is highly illegal. Arya placed the photographs on the table. My father operates 3 warehouses on the eastern docks. Official records say they store textiles and grain. These photos show they actually store unlicensed military weapons, contraband ore, and facilitate undocumented border crossings. The council members leaned forward, examining the evidence. Councillor Reeves's expression hardened. Where did you get these? I took them myself last night during the monthly inventory changeover. You broke into your father's warehouses? I walked in with the workers, documented what I found. Then I left. Arya kept her voice steady. Everything in those photos is verifiable. Send your own inspectors. You'll find the same thing. Another counselor, Counselor Hart, younger and ambitious, spoke up. This is a serious accusation, Miss Vance. You understand if we pursue this, there will be consequences for everyone involved. I understand. Including you. Breaking into private property, even to gather evidence, is still criminal trespass. I'll accept those consequences if it means my father faces consequences for what he's actually doing. The council members exchanged looks. Why now? Councillor Reeves asked. Why bring this to us? Because my father is using the legal system to destroy me for refusing an arranged marriage. Because he owns judges and manipulates contracts and ruins anyone who challenges him. Arya's voice cracked slightly. And because someone needs to stop him before he corrupts this entire territory. Silence filled the room. Finally, Councillor Reeves said, We'll investigate. But, Miss Vance, you need to understand. Your father has significant influence. This investigation could take months. In the meantime, you're vulnerable. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you just declared war on the most powerful man in Ashwood. Reeves's expression was almost sympathetic. That takes courage. But courage doesn't stop bullets or legal maneuvers. No, but evidence does. Arya straightened. I'm not asking you to protect me. I'm asking you to do your jobs. She left before they could respond. The backlash was immediate. By that afternoon, word had spread through Ashwood like wildfire. Marcus Vance's daughter had accused him of smuggling, provided evidence, forced a council investigation. Arya felt the shift everywhere she went. People staring, whispering. Merchants who'd been neutral suddenly refused to speak to her. The boarding house owner informed her they needed to leave by week's end. We're pariahs, she told Kyle that night. No one wants to be associated with us. Look, that's what happens when you challenge power. People get scared. Kale was checking the room's exits, a habit Arya noticed he did constantly now. Your father will retaliate. Soon. Let him. Arya, no. I'm done being afraid of him. Done letting him control everything through intimidation and money. She paced the small room. I made my move. Now he'll make his, and we'll see who's still standing when it's over. Kale grabbed her shoulders, stopping her mid-pace. You need to be smart about this. Your father doesn't fight fair. He'll come at you from angles you don't expect. Then I'll adapt. And if you can't? Arya met his eyes. Then at least I fought back instead of just surviving. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Kael's hand came up to cup her face, rough palm against her cheek, surprisingly gentle. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, he said quietly, or the most reckless. Can it be both? His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Yeah, can be both. The moment stretched between them, charged with something that had been building since the night they married. Then someone hammered on the door. They broke apart. Kael moved to answer it while Arya's hand found her knife. A boy stood in the hall, different from before, but with the same street-worn look. Message for Arya Draven, he said, holding out an envelope. Arya took it. This one was her father's stationery. Expensive, elegant, completely familiar. Inside was a single card. You want war? You have it. But wars have casualties. I wonder how long your husband lasts when everyone knows what he really is. Father Arya read it twice, ice forming in her stomach. What does he mean? She asked Kael. Kael's expression had gone carefully blank. I don't know. Don't lie to me, not now. She held up the card. What does he know about you? Arya boy. What does he know? Kyle was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "We need to talk." They sat in the empty room while Kyle told her the truth, not the edited version he'd given her before, the whole truth. He'd been more than a soldier. He'd been part of an elite unit, shadow operations, the kind that didn't officially exist. His team had done things in dark places that kept territories stable and powerful men in power. And then his team had been burned, set up on a mission that was supposed to be routine. Everyone killed except Kyle, who'd survived by luck and skill. He'd spent years trying to find out who ordered the hit, who wanted his unit eliminated. He never found proof, but he had suspicions. And one of those suspicions was Marcus Vance. The words landed like stones in still water. "You think my father killed your team," Arya said slowly. "I think your father was involved. He had connections to the territories we operated in. He profited from the chaos after we were eliminated." Kale's voice was flat, but I could never prove it. And after a while, I stopped trying. Just tried to survive instead. So when I proposed marriage, I saw an opportunity. Get close to your father's world. Maybe find answers. He met her eyes. "That's why I said yes, Arya. Not because you offered money. Because you were Marcus Vance's daughter, and I thought maybe I could use that." The betrayal hit harder than Arya expected. "You used me." "At first, yes. And now?" "Now I don't know." Kael's expression was raw. "I thought I wanted revenge. Thought I wanted to destroy your father for what he did. But then you turned out to be—" He stopped. "You turned out to be real, and that complicated everything." Arya stood, paced to the window. Her mind spun through implications. Her husband had married her to get revenge on her father. Her father knew this somehow. And now both men were circling each other with her caught in the middle. If my father exposes this," she said quietly, "everyone will think I'm part of it, that I married you knowing what you wanted, that this whole thing was a setup." "Yes. The council investigation will fall apart, all my credibility destroyed." She turned to face him. "I'll be ruined worse than before." "I know. And you didn't think to tell me any of this. Would you have believed me? Would you have married me if you knew I was using you?" Kale's voice was rough. "I made a choice, a selfish one, and now you're paying for it." Arya wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to curse him for turning her entire life into another person's revenge plot, but she was too tired for rage. "Get out," she said. "Arya, get out. I need to think." Kyle stood slowly. He looked like he wanted to say something else. Instead, he just grabbed his coat and left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Arya stood alone in the room that suddenly felt enormous and empty. Her father was a criminal, her husband was a liar, her marriage was a facade, her investigation was about to crumble, and she had exactly 0 allies left. She'd fought so hard to escape one cage only to build herself another one. The card from her father sat on the table, mocking her. Wars have casualties. Arya picked it up, read it again, then she tore it in half. If her father wanted war, she'd give him war. But not the way he expected. Not the way anyone expected. She had one card left to play. One move that would either save her or destroy her completely. And she was going to play it tomorrow. The next morning, Arya walked into the Gilded Compass alone. Mira Castellan was there, exactly as promised, sitting in the same booth with the same expensive wine. "Miss Vance," she said, genuine surprise in her voice. "I didn't expect to see you again." "I need to change my answer," Arya said. "Your answer?" "To your job offer. I want to accept, with modifications." Mira's eyebrow arched. "I'm listening." Arya sat down, leaned forward. "You want someone who understands the frontier markets and isn't afraid of gray areas. I'm that person. But I won't end my marriage. I told you that was non-negotiable. And I'm telling you it's staying because my husband comes with skills you need, security, enforcement, connections to parts of this territory your legitimate employees can't touch." Arya kept her voice level. "You hire both of us or neither of us." That's quite a reversal from a week ago. A week ago I thought I could build something on my own. Turns out I was wrong. The admission tasted bitter. But I'm not wrong about this. You need us. Both of us. And in exchange, we give you something no one else can, which is information on Marcus Vance's entire operation, every contract, every weakness, every illegal move he's made in 20 years. Arya pulled out a second set of photographs, copies of what she'd given the council. Starting with this. Mira examined the images, her expression unreadable. These are serious allegations, she said finally. They're documented facts. The Territorial Council is investigating now. Within months, Marcus Vance's empire will crack. And when it does, someone needs to be ready to fill the void he leaves behind. Arya met Mira's eyes. That someone should be you, with us helping make it happen. Silence stretched between them. Then Mira smiled, sharp and calculating. You've thought this through. I've had time to think. And your husband, does he know you're here? Not yet? He'll object. Probably. But he'll see the logic eventually. Arya leaned back. So do we have a deal? Mira considered for a long moment. Then she extended her hand. We have a deal, both of you. Starting salary 40 silver a month combined, plus percentages. You feed me information on your father's operations and help me position my company to capitalize when he falls. They shook. Arya felt the weight of what she'd just done settle on her shoulders. She'd made an alliance with someone as ruthless as her father. Weaponized her marriage to a man who'd lied to her. Turned personal destruction into professional opportunity. She'd become exactly what she swore she'd never be. Someone who used people strategically, who made cold calculations about relationships, who put survival above principles. But she was still standing, still fighting, and that counted for something. She left the Gilded Compass with a job, a plan, and a burning question about whether the cost of survival was worth what she was paying. The answer, she suspected, would determine everything that came next. Kael was waiting outside the boarding house when Arya returned. He stood in the shadow of the building's overhang, arms crossed, expression unreadable in the morning light. We need to talk, they said simultaneously. Arya almost laughed. Almost. You first, Kael said. I took Mira's job. For both of us. His eyes narrowed. You what? I negotiated. We're both working for her now. 40 silver a month combined plus percentages. In exchange, we feed her information on my father's operations and help position her company to take over when he falls. Arya kept her voice steady. I made the deal an hour ago. Kael stared at her like she'd sprouted a second head. You made a deal without consulting me. You made a marriage without telling me the truth. We're even. That's not... He stopped, jaw tight. This is different. How? You used me to get close to my father. I'm using our situation to survive. Same calculation, different variables. Except I was planning revenge against a criminal. You're planning to work for someone who's probably worse. Mira Castellan runs a legitimate trading company. Mira Castellan runs an empire built on undercutting competitors and exploiting legal loopholes. She's your father in better clothes. Kael's voice was rough. You really think working for her is better than working for him? I think working for her gives us leverage we don't have otherwise. And I think you don't get to judge my choices after lying about yours. Arya crossed her arms. So, here's what's happening. We're taking this job. We're feeding Mira information. And we're using her resources to make sure my father's investigation sticks. And what happens when Mira decides she doesn't need us anymore? When she's consolidated power and we're just liabilities? Then we adapt, like we've been doing since the day we met. Kael was quiet for a long moment. The street noise around them, vendors setting up, workers heading to the docks, the constant hum of Ashwood waking filled the silence. You've changed, he said finally. Good. The person I was a week ago would be dead by now. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I meant you sound like someone who's decided survival is worth any price. And I've met people like that. They don't end well. The words stung because they were true. Arya had spent the last week making increasingly brutal calculations about what she was willing to sacrifice. Her principles, her relationships, her father's respect, though that had never really existed. Maybe I won't end well, she said, but at least I'll end on my own terms instead of someone else's. Kael studied her face. reading something there she wasn't sure she wanted him to see. "All right," he said finally. "We take Mira's job, but I have conditions." "What conditions?" "We don't tell her everything. We feed her enough to keep her invested, but not enough to make us expendable. And the moment she moves against us, we're out. No hesitation, no second guessing." "Agreed. And you stop making major decisions without talking to me first." Arya wanted to argue, wanted to point out he'd made the biggest decision of all, marrying her under false pretenses, without her input. But they didn't have time for that fight. "Fine," she said. "Partners in this. Actually partners." "Actually partners." Kyle extended his hand. She took it. His grip was warm and calloused and steadier than anything else in her life right now. They stood there in the street, two people who'd started as strangers making desperate choices and somehow ended up bound together in ways neither had planned. "We should probably move," Kyle said, not letting go of her hand yet. "The boarding house owner wants us gone by tomorrow, and I'm guessing Mira has better accommodations in mind." "Probably. I'm supposed to meet her this afternoon to discuss logistics." Arya finally pulled her hand back. "But first, we need to pay Chen Wei." "With what money?" "We spent most of it on information and bribes. With Mira's advance, she's fronting us 10 silver to get started." Kale's expression shifted to something like respect. "You negotiated an advance." "I negotiated a lot of things." Arya started walking toward Chen Wei's shop. "Let's go clear one debt before we take on another." Chen Wei counted the money slowly, his expression inscrutable. 83 silver, plus interest. He looked up at Arya. "I'm surprised." "That I paid you back?" "That you survived long enough to pay me back." The old merchant's smile was thin. "I heard about your accusation against your father, about the council investigation. That took either tremendous courage or tremendous stupidity. Can it be both?" "With you, Miss Vance, it usually is." Chen Wei pushed the money into his lockbox. "Your debt is cleared, but I hope you know what you're doing. Marcus Vance doesn't forgive easily." "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for justice." "Those aren't the same thing in Ashwood." "Then maybe Ashwood needs to change." Chen Wei studied her for a long moment. "You know what's interesting? Your father came by yesterday, asked if I'd been helping you. Offered me a substantial sum to testify that you coerced me into fronting you goods." Arya's stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I run a legitimate business and I don't appreciate implications otherwise." The old merchant's expression hardened. "Then I told him to leave before I had him removed. Respectfully, of course." "You stood up to him." "I stood up for clean business. There's a difference." Chen Wei leaned back. "But yes, I suppose I did. And I suspect I'm not the only one. Your father's built his empire on fear and favors. Take away the fear and the favors start looking less appealing." It was the first hint Arya had gotten that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely alone in this fight. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've actually won." Chen Wei waved toward the door. "Now go. I have legitimate business to conduct, and you're attracting attention I don't need." They left the shop just as a messenger was approaching, young man in Mira Castellan's colors. "Mrs. Draven, Ms. Castellan requests your presence at the Meridian Building. Both of you. Immediately." The Meridian Building was Mira's headquarters, 10 stories of glass and steel in Ashwood's commercial district. It made Marcus Vance's offices look quaint by comparison. Arya and Kyle followed the messenger through streets that felt different now. People still stared, but the quality of the stares had changed. Less contempt, more calculation. Word was spreading that Marcus Vance's disowned daughter had landed on her feet working for his biggest competitor. The political landscape was shifting, and everyone was trying to figure out where they fit in the new configuration. Mira's office occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Expensive furniture that somehow managed to look functional rather than ostentatious. Maps of the frontier territories covered one wall, marked with notes and pins tracking trade routes and opportunities. Mira stood at the windows, silhouetted against the skyline. "Arya, Kyle," she turned, gestured to chairs. "Thank you for coming. We have a lot to discuss." They sat. Mira settled behind her desk, power position, completely intentional, and pulled out a folder thick with documents. I've been going through the information you provided about your father's operations. It's comprehensive, detailed, exactly what I need. She opened the folder. But there's a problem. What problem? Arya asked. The Territorial Council's investigation is moving slowly, too slowly. Your father's already begun damage control, shifting inventory, altering records, paying off witnesses. By the time the Council actually inspects those warehouses, there won't be evidence to find. Arya's hands clenched. So he's going to get away with it. Not necessarily, but we need to accelerate the timeline. Force his hand before he can cover everything up. Mira pulled out a map of the docks. Your father has a major shipment coming in 3 days from now. Weapons from the southern territories. Illegal munitions he's planning to sell to mining companies for security purposes. How do you know this? Kael asked. Because I have people in every port in 3 territories. Information is currency, and I'm very wealthy. Mira's smile was sharp. If we can intercept that shipment, document it, expose it publicly before he can hide it, the Council will have no choice but to act immediately. Intercept how? Arya asked. That's where you come in. Both of you. Mira pointed to the map. The shipment arrives at Dock 7 at midnight. Your father will have guards, but not many. He keeps these operations quiet, minimal personnel. You get in, document everything, and get out before security can respond. That's essentially what we did last time, Kael said. It nearly got us killed. Last time you were operating alone with no backup and no resources. This time you'll have my full support, equipment, extraction team, legal cover if things go wrong. Mira leaned forward. This is what I'm paying you for. High-risk intelligence gathering. Arya's mind raced through implications. This was more dangerous than the warehouse. More exposure. More ways it could go catastrophically wrong. It was also their best shot at stopping her father. What's the pay? She asked. For this specific operation? 20 silver each, plus bonuses if the intelligence leads to successful prosecution. 40 silver for one night's work. More money than Arya had made in the entire past week. She looked at Kael. He was already looking at her, reading the same calculations in her expression. We'll need detailed plans of the dock, he said. Security schedules. Equipment manifests. Everything. You'll have it all by this evening. Mira stood, extending her hand. Do we have a deal? Arya stood as well, took the offered hand. We have a deal. The next 2 days blurred into preparation. Mira's people provided everything Kael had requested. Dock layouts, guard rotations, camera placements. They even got them better equipment, compact cameras that worked in low light, communication devices that would let them coordinate with the extraction team. Arya felt like she was preparing for war, smaller scale, more focused, but war nonetheless. She also felt like she was becoming someone she didn't recognize. The woman who'd left her father's house 2 weeks ago had been desperate and scared, but fundamentally still believed in doing things the right way. Rules, ethics, clean business. This woman was planning to break into her father's shipment with criminal precision and corporate backing. The transformation should have bothered her more than it did. The night of the operation, they dressed in dark clothes and met Mira's extraction team at a warehouse 2 blocks from the target dock. The team leader, a woman named Santos with military bearing and cold eyes, ran through the plan one more time. You have 15 minutes from insertion to extraction. Any longer and dock security will respond with force. Get your documentation and get out. We'll be waiting at Checkpoint Delta. Santos looked between them. Questions? What happens if we get caught? Arya asked. You don't get caught. That's not an option. But if we do? Santos's expression didn't change. Then Ms. Castellan disavows all knowledge of the operation and you're on your own. This is off books. Understand? Arya understood. They were expendable. Useful tools until they weren't, just like her father had always treated her. Understood, she said. Good. Move in 10 minutes. The team dispersed. Arya and Kael stood in the shadows, checking equipment one last time. You don't have to do this, Kael said quietly. Yes, I do. I mean, you could walk away. Find another way. You don't have to put yourself at risk for Mira's agenda. This isn't Mira's agenda, this is mine. Arya secured the camera in her jacket. My father's been breaking laws and destroying people for years. Someone needs to stop him. If that someone is me, so be it. Even if it costs you everything? I already lost everything. Now I'm just choosing what I get back. Kyle was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A small knife, well-balanced and sharp. Take this, just in case. Arya took the weapon. It felt heavier than it should. You think it'll come to that? I think we should be prepared for anything. Santos's signal came. Time to move. They crossed the 2 blocks in silence, sticking to shadows, avoiding the main streets where patrols might see them. The dock area at night was a maze of containers and equipment, lit by sparse security lights that created more shadows than they eliminated. Dock 7 loomed ahead, a cargo ship tied up at the pier, workers moving containers with the slow efficiency of a midnight operation. There, Kale whispered, pointing. A container marked with her father's company logo, larger than the others, being moved with extra care. They approached from the blind side, using stacked cargo as cover. Kale picked the container lock with practiced ease. Another skill from his mysterious past, Arya filed away to ask about later. Inside were weapons, crates of rifles, ammunition, grenades, military-grade equipment that had no business being in civilian shipping. Arya started documenting photos of everything, the weapons, the serial numbers, the shipping manifests tucked inside, evidence that would be undeniable even if her father tried to spin it. 2 minutes, Kyle said, watching the workers. Arya worked faster. 1 more crate, 1 more set of photos. Then lights flooded the dock. Stop right there! Arya's heart stopped. Guards, more than there should have been, pouring out of the ship and surrounding containers. They'd been waiting, watching. This was a trap. Run! Kale grabbed her arm. They bolted. Behind them, shouts and footsteps. Ahead, the maze of containers and the extraction point that suddenly felt very far away. A guard appeared from between containers. Kyle hit him with a shoulder check that sent the man sprawling. They kept running. More guards, more shouts. This way! Arya veered left, toward a gap in the container stacks. They squeezed through, emerged on the other side, and ran straight into Marcus Vance. Her father stood with 6 guards, completely calm, completely in control. Hello, Arya, he said. Arya froze. The camera in her jacket felt like it was burning. Evidence. Proof. Everything they needed to destroy him, if they could get away. Father, I expected you'd try something like this. You've always been so predictable when you're desperate. Marcus's expression was almost sympathetic. Almost. Breaking into my warehouses, now intercepting my shipments. You're becoming quite the little criminal. I'm documenting your crimes. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I stand, you're trespassing on private property, tampering with legal cargo, and colluding with my business competitors to sabotage legitimate operations. He smiled. That's at least 3 separate felonies. Should we discuss which prison you'll be sent to? Kyle shifted beside her, calculating angles, looking for escape routes. There are none, Marcus said, reading his intention. My guards have this entire section locked down. The extraction team your employer promised? I bought them off an hour ago. You're alone. Arya's mind raced. Trapped. No backup. Her father in complete control. Just like always. Except this time she had something he didn't know about. She pulled out the camera, held it up so he could see. I already have what I need, she said. Photos of everything in that container. Serial numbers, manifests, evidence you can't explain away or bury. The moment I don't report back to Mira, she releases everything to the Territorial Council and every newspaper in 3 territories. Her father's expression shifted, just slightly. First crack in his control. You're bluffing. Am I? You taught me to always have a backup plan. Congratulations, you were an excellent teacher. Arya's hand tightened on the camera. So here's what's going to happen. You let us walk out of here. We give this evidence to the council. You face investigation and prosecution, and you leave me alone, permanently. Or I destroy this camera and everything on it right now. Smash it beyond recovery. You keep operating illegally, and I keep trying to stop you until one of us ends up dead. She held his stare. Your choice, Father. Cut your losses or escalate to mutual destruction. Silence stretched across the dock. Guards shifted nervously. Even Kyle seemed surprised by her play. Marcus studied the camera, then Arya, calculating probabilities, weighing outcomes. "You won't destroy it," he said finally. "That evidence is the only leverage you have." "You're right, which is why I'll only destroy it if you force my hand. But I will, if I have to. Because, at this point, I'd rather have nothing than let you keep controlling everything." Her father's jaw tightened. For the first time in Arya's life, she saw something like uncertainty in his eyes. "Let them go," he said. The guards didn't move. "I said let them go!" Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. The guards parted, slowly, reluctantly. Arya and Kael moved through the gap, weapons trained on them from every angle. "This isn't over," Marcus called after them. "I know," Arya said without turning. "But it's not over on your terms anymore." They walked away from the dock. Every step felt like it might be interrupted by bullets or guards, but nothing stopped them. They made it to the extraction point, now genuinely empty, Santos and her team long gone, and kept walking until they reached a safe district. Only then did Arya let herself breathe. "That was insane," Kael said. "You threatened to destroy our only evidence." "I was bluffing." "What if he'd called the bluff?" "Then we'd have found another way." Arya pulled out the camera, checked that it was still intact. "But he didn't, because for the first time he wasn't sure what I'd do, and that uncertainty bought us an exit." Kael stared at her. "You've definitely changed." "Good. The person I was couldn't have done that." They walked back to Mira's building in silence. Arya's mind was already moving ahead. Next steps, contingencies, how to leverage tonight's evidence into actual prosecution. She'd won a battle. Tiny. Incremental. But won, nonetheless. Her father was no longer invincible in her mind. He was just a man making calculations, and those calculations could be wrong. That shift in perspective changed everything. Mira was waiting in her office when they arrived near dawn. Her expression was controlled fury. "My extraction team sold you out," she said without preamble. "We noticed," Arya replied. "I'm having them dealt with. But that's not the point. The point is this operation was compromised and you nearly got killed." Mira's eyes were ice. "I'm terminating our agreement. It's too dangerous having you on payroll if your father can corrupt my people." Arya had expected this. "Or," she said, "you could recognize that we succeeded anyway. Got the evidence, outmaneuvered my father, and proved we're capable of operating in hostile territory without support." She pulled out the camera. "This documentation is worth more than our entire contract. You know it. I know it. So let's stop pretending you're terminating anything." Mira stared at her for a long moment. Then she laughed, sharp and genuine. "You have nerve. I'll give you that." "I have results. Nerve is just how I deliver them." "Fine. Contract stays active. But I'm doubling your compensation for tonight. 20 silver each wasn't enough for what you did." Mira pulled out a lockbox, counted out coins. 30 each, plus the original agreement stands. 60 silver, more money than Arya had ever held at once. She took it, felt the weight of it. Physical proof that survival could be profitable. "There's something else," Mira said. "The Territorial Council has accelerated their investigation based on your previous evidence. They're raiding your father's warehouses tomorrow morning. Multiple locations, full forensic teams." Arya's pulse quickened. "How do you know?" "Because I have 2 council members on retainer and they wanted me to know the landscape is shifting." Mira's smile was sharp. "Your father's empire is cracking. Within a week, he'll be facing criminal charges. Within a month, he'll be destroyed." It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt complicated. Satisfaction mixed with something that might have been grief for the relationship she'd never actually had with her father. "What happens to his businesses?" Kael asked. "They'll be seized pending investigation, then auctioned off to pay restitution and legal fees." Mira's expression turned calculating. "I plan to acquire most of them, consolidate his territory into my operations. It's efficient." "And us?" Arya asked. "You'll help facilitate the transition. Use your knowledge of his operations to ensure smooth transfers. Make sure nothing valuable slips through the cracks." Mira leaned back. "Consider it job security." Arya and Kael left with money, employment, and the knowledge that within days her father's world would collapse. She'd done it, actually done it, taken on the most powerful man in Ashwood and won. The victory felt surreal. Jet. The Territorial Council's raid happened exactly as Mira predicted. 6 warehouses hit simultaneously. Evidence seized. Records confiscated. By noon, Marcus Vance was in custody facing charges that could put him away for decades. The news spread through Ashwood like fire through dry grass. Arya watched it unfold from a cafe in the merchant district. People rushing past with papers. Merchants gathering in clusters to discuss. The whole city recalibrating around the fact that Marcus Vance, untouchable Marcus Vance, had fallen. "How do you feel?" Kael asked. Arya took a sip of coffee she couldn't taste. "I don't know yet. Ask me when the shock wears off." "That could take a while." "Probably." They sat in silence, watching the city react to an earthquake that had been building for 2 weeks. A messenger approached their table, different one this time, official council colors. "Mas Draven, Councillor Reeves requests your presence at the territorial offices, immediately." Arya and Kael exchanged looks. "Both of us?" Arya asked. "Just you, ma'am. Mr. Draven can wait here." Kael looked like he wanted to object. Arya touched his arm. "It's fine. If they wanted to arrest me, they'd send guards, not messengers." "You sure?" "No, but I'm going anyway." The territorial offices were chaos. Council members rushing between rooms, clerks hauling evidence boxes, lawyers arguing in hallways, the machinery of justice grinding forward with unusual speed. Councillor Reeves met Arya in a private conference room. The older woman looked tired but satisfied. "Miss Vance? Or should I say, Mrs. Draven?" "Either works." "Sit, please." Reeves gestured to a chair. "I wanted to thank you personally. Your evidence, both sets, gave us exactly what we needed to move against your father. We've recovered enough illegal contraband to justify charges on 17 separate counts. He'll be in prison for the rest of his life." The finality of it hit Arya hard. Her father, invincible, untouchable, spending his remaining years in a cell. "I'm glad the evidence helped," she managed. "It did more than help, it changed everything." Reeves pulled out a folder. "But there are complications we need to discuss." "What complications?" "Your father's businesses, his assets. Under territorial law, family members have first claim before assets go to public auction." Reeves opened the folder. "You're his daughter, which means legally you could claim ownership of his entire empire." Arya's mind went blank. "What?" "It's standard procedure. Family claims are processed before criminal seizure. Your father built everything under his own name rather than corporate entities. A mistake, as it turns out, which means, as his next of kin, you have legal standing to take control of everything before the territory confiscates it." "But Arya stopped. "He disowned me." "Informally, yes, but he never filed legal paperwork to that effect. As far as the courts are concerned, you're still his heir." Reeves pushed the folder across. "The question is whether you want to be." Arya stared at the documents. Pages of legal text outlining exactly how she could claim her father's empire. The warehouses, the contracts, the influence, everything he'd never let her touch. "What happens if I don't claim it?" she asked. "Then it goes to auction. Mira Castellan will likely acquire most of it. She has the capital and the strategic positioning. So her choices were take her father's empire or let Mira have it. Neither felt clean." "Can I think about it?" Arya asked. "You have 48 hours before the claims period closes. After that, it's public auction." Reeves stood. "I know this is complicated, but Miss Vance, you earned this. You took down a corrupt operation through courage and determination. Don't let anyone, including yourself, diminish that." Arya left the territorial offices in a daze. Kael was waiting where she'd left him, alert and watchful. "What happened?" he asked. "I can claim my father's businesses, all of them, legally." Kael's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on careful neutrality. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Arya started walking. She needed to move, needed to think. "I spent 2 weeks fighting to destroy him. Now they're offering me everything he built. It feels wrong. Why? Because I'd be profiting from his crimes, becoming what I fought against. Or, Kyle said carefully, you'd be taking a corrupt system and turning it into something legitimate, using his infrastructure for good instead of exploitation. You think I should take it? Well, I think you should consider all the angles before deciding. They turned down a quieter street. What would you do with it? If you claimed everything? Arya hadn't let herself think that far, but the question opened possibilities. I'd clean it up, make everything legitimate. No more smuggling, no more corruption, just honest trade. Her mind started racing. I'd renegotiate his contracts, fair terms instead of exploitative ones. Pay workers decent wages. Build the empire he should have built if he hadn't been so focused on power and control. That sounds like a plan. It sounds insane. I'm 22. I've been operating independently for 2 weeks. I have no idea how to run an actual empire. You've been learning your whole life. You just weren't allowed to use it. Kale stopped walking, turned to face her. You're smart, Arya. Strategic. Willing to take risks. Those are exactly the qualities you'd need. And what about Mira? She's expecting to acquire his businesses. If I claim them instead, she'll see it as betrayal. Then you negotiate with her. Offer partnership instead of competition. You have leverage now, something she wants. Use it. It was exactly the kind of ruthless calculation Arya had been making for 2 weeks. But this felt different, bigger, more permanent. I need to think, she said. Then think. You have 48 hours. They walked back to the apartment Mira had provided, nicer than the boarding house, still modest enough to feel temporary. Arya sat by the window and stared out at Ashwood while her mind churned through possibilities. She could take her father's empire and transform it, build something legitimate from his corrupt foundation, prove that power didn't have to mean exploitation. Or she could walk away. Let Mira have it. Keep working for someone else instead of risking everything on her own vision. Safety or risk? Security or possibility? The same choice she'd been making since the night she married Kyle. She looked at him across the room, this man who'd started as a stranger, became a tool, evolved into a partner, who'd lied to her but also stood by her, who'd fought for her when he could have walked away. If I do this, she said, I'll need help, real help, not just muscle, though that too, but someone who understands strategy and isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. Kyle met her eyes. You asking me to be a business partner? I'm asking you to be whatever this actually is, because it stopped being fake somewhere along the way, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. The honesty hung between them, raw and risky. Kale crossed to where she sat, knelt so they were eye level. I lied to you about why I married you, he said quietly. I was using you to get close to your father. That's true. But Arya, somewhere between the boarding house and tonight, that stopped mattering. You stopped being a tool and started being... He stopped, searching for words. You started being the reason I stay. Not revenge, not strategy. You. Arya's throat tightened. That's incredibly inconvenient timing. I know. We're in the middle of potentially taking over a criminal empire, and you decide now is the time to have feelings? Apparently. His hand came up to cup her face. So what do we do about it? Arya leaned into his palm. We claim the empire. We transform it into something legitimate. We build something that's actually ours instead of your revenge plot or my escape plan. That's a terrible idea. Probably. You in anyway? Kyle's smile was genuine for maybe the first time since she'd known him. Yeah, I'm in. He kissed her then, not gentle, not tentative, but certain, like this had been inevitable since the moment she proposed marriage in a fight ring. When they broke apart, Arya felt steadier than she had in weeks. We have work to do, she said. We have 48 hours to figure out how to run an empire. Then we better get started. They spent the next 2 days in controlled chaos. Arya met with lawyers to file claim paperwork. Kale coordinated with Mira's team, negotiating partnerships instead of competitions, offering her profitable contracts in exchange for not blocking the inheritance claim. Mira wasn't happy about it, but she was pragmatic. You've outmaneuvered me, she said when they met. I'm impressed and irritated. I'm offering you better terms than you'd get at auction, Arya pointed out. Guaranteed contracts, priority partnerships, profit sharing on new routes. All of which means I don't get full control. No one gets full control. That's the point. No more empires built on one person's ruthlessness. Arya leaned forward. Partner with me or compete against me? Your choice. Mira studied her for a long moment. You've become dangerous, Arya Draven. Good. Dangerous keeps me alive. They shook on terms that were mutually profitable, if not perfectly ideal. On the second day, Councillor Reeves approved Arya's claim. Marcus Vance's empire officially transferred to his daughter's control pending final court review. Arya stood in what used to be her father's main office, now hers, and tried to process the magnitude of what had just happened. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a disowned daughter with no prospects. Now she controlled the largest freight operation in 3 territories. The absurdity was overwhelming. You all right? Kyle asked from the doorway. I own my father's empire. I'm 22. I have no idea what I'm doing. Arya turned to face him. But yeah, I'm all right. What's first? First, we review every contract and terminate anything illegal or exploitative. Then we rehire workers he fired unjustly. Then we start building trade networks based on fair terms instead of intimidation. She pulled out the notes she'd been making. It'll take months to clean everything up, maybe years. Lucky we have time. Arya looked at him. Really looked. This man who'd become her husband through desperation and stayed through something else entirely. What are we doing? She asked. Actually, what is this? I don't know, but I know I'm not leaving. Kale crossed to her. We started with a 6-month arrangement. That's gone. We're whatever comes next. That's not very specific. Does it need to be? Maybe not. Maybe they could build this the same way they'd built everything else. One desperate choice at a time, figuring it out as they went. Partners, Arya said. In business and whatever else this is. Partners, Kyle agreed. Though maybe at some point we should discuss the fact that we're actually married and that's becoming relevant. Later. After I figure out how to run this empire without destroying it. Fair. They stood in her father's office, now theirs, and looked out at Ashwood spreading below them. Arya had set out to escape her father's control. Somehow she'd ended up destroying his empire and claiming it for herself. It wasn't the victory she'd planned, but it was the one she'd earned. And for the first time since this started, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could actually build something worth keeping. The fight wasn't over. There would be court battles, investigations, people trying to undermine her authority. All the complications of transforming corruption into legitimacy. But she'd won the first battle, claimed her space, proved she could survive when everyone said she'd fail. That counted for something, that counted for everything. The first board meeting was a disaster. Arya sat at the head of the conference table, her father's old seat, now hers, facing 12 men who'd spent decades building fortunes off Marcus Vance's ruthlessness. They stared at her like she was an amusing mistake that would correct itself soon. Let me be clear, she said, keeping her voice level. Every contract this company holds is being reviewed. Anything exploitative gets renegotiated or terminated. Anyone caught engaging in illegal operations is fired immediately. We're going legitimate, completely. Silence. Then Davies, her father's oldest business partner, laughed. You can't be serious. I'm absolutely serious. Miss Vance, you don't understand how this business works. The profit margins we maintain require certain flexibilities. You mean bribes, intimidation, smuggling? Arya pulled out a stack of files. I've spent 3 days reviewing our operations. I understand exactly how this business works, and it's ending. You'll bankrupt us in 6 months, another board member said. The competition operates on the same principles we do. If we go clean, they'll destroy us. Then we'll be better than them. Faster, smarter. We'll win on quality and reliability instead of corruption. Arya leaned forward. Or you can resign now, and I'll find replacements who actually want to build something sustainable. The threat landed. These men had spent years consolidating power. They weren't going to walk away easily. The board has authority to remove leadership if we determine they're acting against company interests, Davies said carefully. We could vote you out. Install someone more, experienced. You could try. Arya's smile was sharp. But I own 51% of company shares. My father kept majority control and it transferred to me with everything else. So you can vote all you want. I'll override it. She watched the realization dawn on their faces. They'd assumed she was a figurehead, a temporary inconvenience. They'd assumed wrong. So here's what's happening, Arya continued. You have 2 weeks to bring me plans for converting your divisions to legitimate operations. Show me you can adapt or I'll find people who can. Meeting adjourned. She stood and walked out before anyone could respond. Kyle was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. How'd it go? He asked. They hate me. Good. Fear and respect look similar from a distance. Arya almost laughed. I'm not sure there's any respect happening. Give it time. You just took away their favorite toys. They'll whine for a while, then fall in line or leave. What if they don't? What if they sabotage everything? Then we adapt, like always. Kale pushed off the wall. Come on, you have another meeting in 20 minutes. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Arya worked 16-hour days reviewing contracts, meeting with territorial officials, negotiating new terms with suppliers who'd gotten used to her father's aggressive tactics. Every decision was contested, every change fought. But slowly, painfully, things shifted. The first major contract she renegotiated was with a mining operation her father had been bleeding dry with unfair transport fees. Arya cut the fees in half, extended payment terms, and offered profit sharing on new routes. The mining company's owner, a weathered woman named Carmen who'd been fighting Marcus Vance for years, stared at the new contract like it might disappear. Why are you doing this? Carmen asked. Because fair terms build better partnerships than exploitation, Arya said simply. My father never understood that. I do. Carmen signed. Then she told 3 other operations about the new terms. Within a week, Arya had 5 new clients who'd refused to work with Marcus, but trusted his daughter might be different. Small victories. But they added up. The second major change was internal. Arya reinstated 40 workers her father had fired for minor infractions or just because he felt like it. She raised base wages by 15%, implemented safety standards that actually protected people instead of just meeting minimum legal requirements. The cost was significant. The impact was immediate. Worker productivity increased. Turnover dropped. People started talking about the Vance operation like it might actually be a decent place to work instead of a necessary evil. Davies resigned after the second week. 3 other board members followed. Arya replaced them with younger merchants who understood the frontier was changing and old tactics wouldn't work anymore. By the end of the first month, the company looked nothing like what her father had built. The question was whether it would survive. The Territorial Council's investigation concluded on a cold morning in late autumn. Arya sat in the gallery while they read the verdict against her father. Guilty on 14 counts, 25 years minimum sentence. Marcus Vance showed no emotion as they led him away. But his eyes found Arya in the crowd, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Father and daughter. Destroyer and destroyed. Then he was gone. Arya waited to feel something, victory, vindication, even grief. Instead, she just felt tired. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, questions shouted from every direction about her father, the company, her plans. No comment, Kyle said, steering her through the crowd. They made it to the car. Another thing that still felt surreal, having a car and driver instead of walking everywhere, and escaped before the press could corner them completely. You all right? Kyle asked once they were moving. I don't know. I spent a month destroying my father. Now he's actually destroyed and I don't feel anything. That's normal. You're processing. How long does processing take? However long it takes. He was quiet for a moment. You know he'll appeal. Drag this out for years probably. Let him. The company's mine regardless of what happens legally. Arya stared out the window at Ashwood passing by. I proved I could take him down. That's enough. It should have been enough. But something still felt unfinished. That night, Arya got a message. Her father wanted to see her. Prison visit tomorrow. She almost said no. Almost. I'll go with you, Kyle offered. No. This is something I need to do alone. The prison was exactly as grim as she expected. Gray walls, armed guards, the smell of institutional despair. They led her to a visiting room where her father sat behind reinforced glass. He looked smaller somehow, older. The power that had always surrounded him diminished to almost nothing. Arya sat, picked up the phone. Her father did the same. "Hello, Arya." "Father?" "You look well. Success suits you." "I didn't come here for small talk." "No, I imagine you didn't." Marcus leaned back. "You wanted to see if I'd broken, if imprisonment had humbled me, made me regret my choices. Have you?" "Not even slightly. I did what I had to do to build an empire in a lawless territory. You may not approve of my methods, but they worked, until you destroyed everything." The lack of remorse should have angered her. Instead, it was almost clarifying. "I didn't destroy anything," Arya said. "I just refused to be destroyed by you. There's a difference." "Is there?" "From where I sit, you used everything I taught you to tear down what I built. You're more like me than you want to admit." "I'm nothing like you." "You're exactly like me. Ruthless, strategic, willing to do whatever it takes to win." Marcus's smile was bitter. "The only difference is you've convinced yourself your motives are pure. They're not. You wanted power just like I did. You just found a more socially acceptable way to take it." The words hit harder than Arya expected because there was truth in them. She had been ruthless, had made brutal calculations about who to use and how, had built her victory on tactics her father would have recognized. "Maybe I am like you," she said slowly, "but I'm choosing to do something different with that power. I'm choosing to build instead of exploit, to create opportunities instead of hoarding them. That's the difference between us. We'll see how long that lasts. Power corrupts everyone eventually. You'll learn. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll prove you wrong about everything." Arya stood. "I didn't come here for your approval or your redemption. I came here to say goodbye. You don't get to be part of my life anymore. Not as my father. Not as anything." For the first time, something flickered in Marcus's expression. "Arya." "Goodbye, father." She hung up the phone, walked out without looking back. The closure she'd been searching for settled into place. Not perfect, not clean, but real. She was done with Marcus Vance. Completely. 3 months after taking control of the company, Arya hosted her first major trade summit. Representatives from every territory, major merchants, territorial officials, everyone who mattered in frontier commerce. The event was held in a neutral hall, carefully planned to demonstrate the new Vance operation's legitimacy and ambition. Arya gave the opening speech wearing a suit tailored to actually fit her instead of the borrowed clothes she'd been surviving in months ago. She stood at the podium and looked out at a sea of faces, some skeptical, some curious, some openly hostile. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "I know many of you have concerns about the Vance Freight Company under new leadership. Some of you did business with my father for years. Others refused to work with him on principle. I understand both positions." She paused, let the room settle. "But I'm not my father, and this company isn't what it was. We're committed to transparent contracts, fair pricing, and ethical operations. We believe profitable business and moral business aren't mutually exclusive, and we're here to prove it." She outlined new trade routes, partnership opportunities, collaborative frameworks that would benefit everyone instead of just concentrating power. The response was mixed. Some merchants were intrigued, others remained skeptical, but everyone was listening. After the formal presentation, people approached her individually, some to negotiate deals, some to test whether she was serious about the changes. One merchant, an older man named Garrett, who'd refused to work with Marcus for a decade, pulled her aside. "Your father tried to run me out of business twice," he said, "undercut my prices, spread rumors, did everything he could to destroy me because I wouldn't pay his bribes. I know, I've read the files. I'm sorry he did that to you. Are you? Or are you just sorry it's bad for business now?" Arya met his eyes. "I'm sorry because it was wrong, business aside. What he did to you and dozens of others was wrong, and I'm trying to build something different." Garrett studied her face. "You mean that?" "I do." "Then maybe we can talk about a partnership. I've got routes through the northern territories your company doesn't have access to. Could be mutually beneficial." They shook hands, scheduled a meeting. Small victories. Building trust. One conversation at a time. By the end of the summit, Arya had 12 new partnership agreements and interest from 20 more merchants who wanted to see if the new Vance operation was legitimate. That went well, Kale said as they packed up. It went okay. Half of them still think I'm going to revert to my father's tactics the moment it's convenient. Then prove them wrong, repeatedly, until they run out of skepticism. How long will that take? Years, probably, but you've got time. They walked out of the hall together. Outside, the city was settling into evening, lights coming on, people heading home, the constant motion of Ashwood continuing regardless of who ran its businesses. I need to tell you something, Kyle said as they reached the car. Arya's stomach tightened at his tone. What? I found proof. About my team. About what happened to them. She stopped walking. And? Your father wasn't involved. I thought he was. Spent years thinking he'd ordered the hit, but I finally tracked down the actual source. It was a territorial governor covering up illegal weapons deals. Your father was just collateral benefit. He profited from the chaos, but he didn't cause it. The relief that flooded through Arya was overwhelming. So you don't have to hate him anymore. I still hate him for plenty of other things, but the one thing I blamed him for most, that wasn't his fault. Kale's expression was complicated. Which means I married you under completely false pretenses, used you for revenge that wasn't even properly directed. You already told me that, weeks ago. I know, but now it's confirmed. You could have the marriage annulled, based on fraud. Get out clean if you wanted. Arya stared at him. Do you want that? No, but I'd understand if you did. She almost laughed. After everything, the desperate proposal, the smuggling runs, the corporate takeover, the transformation of her entire life. He thought she'd walk away over technicalities? Kyle, we've been actually married for 3 months, building a business together, living together, fighting together. She moved closer. At what point does fake marriage become real marriage, if not somewhere in there? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Then here's my answer. I don't want an annulment. I don't want clean. I want whatever this messy, complicated thing we've built actually is. She took his hand. Unless you want out. Not even slightly. Then stop offering me exits I don't want. He pulled her close, kissed her there on the street while Ashwood moved around them. When they broke apart, Arya felt steadier than she had in months. We should probably make this official, Kyle said. Actually get married instead of just legally being married. We are actually married. I mean ceremony, public declaration, the whole thing. He looked almost nervous. If you want. Arya considered it. They'd started with a midnight transaction in a frontier marriage office. Maybe they could end with something that actually meant what it said. Yeah, she said. I want that. They held the ceremony 6 months after Arya took control of the company. Small gathering, no press, no spectacle, just the people who mattered. Mira Castellan came, surprisingly. You've proven useful, she said by way of congratulation. I respect that. Chenwei brought an expensive gift and quietly mentioned he'd spread word among other merchants that the Vance operation was worth trusting. Even Serena showed up, looking tired but determined. She'd left Lucian, scandal in itself, and was rebuilding her own life. The sisters weren't close. Probably never would be. But they were trying. The ceremony itself was simple. Same hall where Arya had hosted the trade summit, transformed with flowers and light. She wore a dress that actually fit, her hair done professionally instead of hidden under a worker's cap. Kyle wore a suit that made him look less like a fighter and more like someone who belonged in boardrooms. Though Arya knew he could shift between both worlds without effort, they stood in front of a territorial magistrate. Not the exhausted clerk from months ago, but someone official who made it ceremonial. Do you, Arya Vance, take this man as your lawfully wedded husband? She looked at Kyle. This man who'd been a stranger, a tool, a liar, a partner, and finally something that defied easy categorization. I do, she said. Meant it this time in ways she couldn't have before. Do you, Kale Draven, take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife? Kale's gray eyes held hers. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you married. Again. The magistrate smiled. You may kiss. They did. To applause and cheers from the small crowd. It should have felt redundant, They'd been legally married for months, but this felt different, intentional, chosen instead of desperate. At the reception, people mingled and drank and pretended frontier politics weren't happening in every conversation. Arya found herself watching it all from the sidelines, trying to process how much had changed. A year ago, she'd been Marcus Vance's frustrated daughter, trying to prove herself worthy of recognition that never came. Now she was Arya Draven, owner of the largest freight operation in 3 territories, rebuilding her father's empire into something legitimate. The transformation was staggering. "You look thoughtful," Counselor Reeves said, appearing beside her with wine. "Just processing." "Understandable. You've had quite a year?" Reeves sipped her drink. "I wanted to tell you, the Council is officially recognizing the Vance operation as a model for ethical frontier commerce. We're recommending other companies follow your example." Arya blinked. "Seriously?" "Seriously. You've proven profitable business and moral business aren't contradictory. That matters." Reeves's expression softened slightly. "Your father built an empire on fear. You're building one on trust. That's harder, but it lasts longer." The counselor moved on, leaving Arya with the weight of that recognition. She'd done it, actually done it, transformed corruption into legitimacy, proved everyone wrong who said she'd fail. Kale found her a few minutes later. "You hiding?" "Processing." "You keep saying that." "It keeps being true." She leaned against him. "Did you ever think we'd end up here when I proposed in that fight ring?" "Not even close. I thought we'd last maybe a week before your father destroyed us both." "What changed?" "You did. You stopped being desperate and started being dangerous. That's when I knew we'd survive." Arya thought about that. Desperate Arya had made reckless choices to escape. Dangerous Arya had made strategic choices to win. The transition between them had been gradual and brutal and absolutely necessary. "I'm glad you stayed," she said. "I'm glad you kept making it worth staying." They stood together watching their guests, the people who'd become their community through necessity and choice. Not family exactly, but something close. Later that night, after everyone left and the hall was quiet, they stood in the empty space looking at the remnants of celebration. "What now?" Kael asked. "Now we keep building. The company's stable but not secure. We've got competitors trying to undercut us. Territorial regulations changing, new markets opening." Arya ticked off challenges on her fingers. "Basically, everything that comes with running an actual business instead of a criminal enterprise." "Sounds exhausting." "Probably, but it's ours. Actually ours, not my father's, not something we're stealing or faking. Ours." That distinction mattered more than Arya could articulate. They'd started with nothing, built something from desperation and lies and brutal determination, transformed it into something real. Not perfect. Definitely not perfect. But real. 2 years later, Arya stood in front of the Territorial Council presenting a comprehensive plan for frontier trade reform. Standardized contracts, worker protections, anti-corruption measures that would apply to every major operation. It was ambitious, probably too ambitious. But she'd learned that ambitious plans executed well beat conservative plans any day. The council debated for 3 hours. Merchants argued, politicians postured. Everyone had opinions about whether this level of regulation would help or hurt frontier commerce. Finally, Councillor Reeves called for a vote. The reform package passed. Narrowly, but passed. Arya walked out of the council chambers knowing she'd just changed the fundamental structure of how business operated in 3 territories. Her father had built an empire on exploiting gaps in regulation. She'd just closed those gaps permanently. The irony was almost poetic. Outside, Kael was waiting with their daughter. They'd had Elena 8 months ago, unplanned but not unwanted. She had Arya's dark hair and Kael's gray eyes, and absolutely no patience for anything. "How'd it go?" Kael asked, shifting Elena to his other arm. "It passed. We're reforming frontier commerce, whether merchants like it or not." "They'll hate you for it." "They already hate me. Might as well earn it." Arya took Elena, who immediately grabbed her mother's hair and yanked. "Ow. Yes, I missed you too." They walked through the commercial district toward home. 2 years ago, Arya had owned nothing and knew nobody. Now she owned a company, had reformed territorial policy, and was raising a daughter while trying not to repeat her father's mistakes. The weight of it should have been crushing. Instead, it felt manageable, because she wasn't doing it alone anymore. People on the street recognized her now. Some nodded respectfully. Others stared with suspicion. A few smiled genuine greetings. Arya Draven was no longer Marcus Vance's disowned daughter. She was her own force, her own power. And she'd built it from absolutely nothing. They passed the fight rings where this all started, the fountain where an old woman had told Arya to be brave enough to take risks, the boarding house where they'd hidden when everything was falling apart. Landmarks of survival. "You ever regret it?" Kyle asked, reading her expression. "Which part?" "Any of it. The marriage, the fight, taking on your father." Arya thought about it honestly. "No, I regret the pain it caused, the relationships it destroyed, the person I had to become to survive." She adjusted Elena's weight. "But I don't regret choosing to fight instead of submit. That choice made everything else possible." "Even the parts that hurt?" "Especially the parts that hurt. Pain means you're actually living instead of just existing." They reached their house, modest compared to what they could afford, but comfortable. Home in ways her father's mansion never was. Inside, Arya fed Elena while Kyle started dinner. Domestic routine that still felt surreal after everything they'd survived to get here. "I got a letter today," Kyle said, chopping vegetables with the same precision he used for everything. "From my old unit, the few who survived the ambush. They've been trying to find each other, build some kind of memorial for the ones who didn't make it." "Are you going to respond?" "I don't know. That life feels like it happened to someone else." "It did. You're different now." "So are you." Arya looked down at Elena, who'd fallen asleep mid-feeding. This tiny person who existed because two desperate people made a reckless choice in a fight ring. The cascade of consequences from that one moment was staggering. "We should tell her the story someday," Arya said. "How we met, how we survived, all of it. She'll think we're insane." "We were insane, but we made it work." Kale smiled. "Yeah, we did." 5 years after the marriage, Arya stood on a platform overlooking the new Vance transportation hub. It was massive, central terminal connecting 6 territories, processing hundreds of shipments daily, employing over 3,000 workers, all operating under the ethical framework she'd built. The dedication ceremony drew crowds, merchants, politicians, workers, press from every major territory. Arya gave a speech about transformation and second chances and building something better than what came before. She didn't mention her father, didn't need to. Everyone knew the story, Marcus Vance's empire, destroyed by his own daughter who rebuilt it into something legitimate. The narrative had taken on a life of its own. Part truth, part legend, part cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating desperate people. Arya let the story be what it was. She had no interest in controlling narratives, just in building reality. After the ceremony, an old woman approached her. Weathered face, sharp eyes, shawl wrapped against autumn wind. It took Arya a moment to recognize her, the woman from the fountain, the one who'd told her to find someone desperate enough to say yes. "You did well," the woman said without preamble. "You remember me?" "I remember every girl I've given dangerous advice to. You're the first one who actually made it work." The woman smiled, genuine warmth this time instead of that thin, testing expression. "You proved me right. That's satisfying. I could have died. Multiple times. But you didn't. You fought and survived and built something worth having." The woman gestured at the transportation hub. "This is better than anything your father created. You know that, right?" "I hope so." "You know so. Stop doubting yourself. You've earned certainty." The woman walked away before Arya could respond. Kael appeared beside her, Elena on his shoulders now, 5 years old and full of questions about everything. "Who was that?" he asked. "Someone who gave me advice when I needed it." Arya watched the old woman disappear into the crowd. "I should probably thank her." "Later. Right now your daughter wants to know why trains can't fly." "Because physics, Elena." "But why physics?" "Because the universe has rules." "But why?" Arya laughed. "We're going to be here a while, aren't we?" "Welcome to parenthood." They walked through the terminal together. Around them, people moved with purpose, catching trains, meeting connections, building lives across the frontier, all made possible by the infrastructure Arya had created from her father's ashes. She'd set out to escape him, ended up destroying him, then took what he'd built and transformed it into something that actually helped people instead of exploiting them. The journey from desperate daughter to frontier power had been brutal and complicated and absolutely worth it, because she'd proven the fundamental truth that had driven her from the beginning. Survival wasn't enough. Thriving mattered. Building something meaningful mattered. Refusing to break under pressure mattered. And she'd done all of it. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but successfully. That night, after Elena was asleep and the house was quiet, Arya and Kyle sat on their balcony overlooking Ashwood. "You think we'll ever have a boring life?" Arya asked. "I hope not. Boring sounds terrible. Even a little boring? Just occasionally?" "Maybe occasionally." Kale pulled her close. "But mostly I hope we keep building things, fixing things, making this frontier actually function instead of just barely surviving. That's a lifetime of work. Good thing we've got a lifetime." Arya leaned into him, watching the city lights spread out below them. Somewhere in those lights was the fight ring where this started, the boarding house where they'd hidden, the docks where they'd almost died. All of it leading here, to this moment, this life they'd built from nothing. "I love you," she said. First time she'd said it out loud despite living it for years. Kale's arms tightened around her. "I love you too, even though you're absolutely exhausting. You married me in a fight ring. You knew what you were getting." "I really didn't, but I'm glad I stayed to find out." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Ashwood settle into night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, competition, regulation battles, the endless work of maintaining what they'd built while pushing for more. But tonight, they had peace, hard-earned, battle-tested, real. And that was enough. 10 years after the marriage, the Territorial Council voted to rename the frontier's main trade route. They called it the Draven Passage. Not Vance. Draven. Arya stood at the ceremony, feeling the weight of that recognition. Her father's name had been erased from the thing he'd controlled for decades, replaced with the name she'd chosen when she married a stranger in desperate defiance. The symbolism was overwhelming. "How do you feel?" Counselor Reeves asked. She'd aged but remained sharp, still the voice of reason on the council. "Like I've finally stopped running from my father's shadow," Arya said honestly. "You didn't just stop running, you eclipsed him entirely." Reeves smiled. "He built an empire on fear that lasted 20 years. You've built one on trust that will last generations. That's the difference between destruction and creation." After the ceremony, Arya visited her father in prison. She hadn't seen him in years. Wasn't even sure why she was going now. He looked old, broken in ways that had nothing to do with physical confinement. The power that had defined him was gone completely. "Hello, Father." Marcus looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Arya, I didn't expect to come. But they renamed the main trade route today. The Draven Passage." She paused. "I thought you should know." "The Draven Passage." He tasted the words. "Not Vance anymore." "No, not Vance." He was quiet for a long time. "You've done well. Better than I ever did, though it kills me to admit it. I'm not here for your approval." "Then why are you here?" Arya thought about it. "To tell you I've forgiven you. Not because you deserve it, you don't. But because I'm tired of carrying anger. I've built something good and anger doesn't have a place in it anymore. You're a better person than I ever was. I know, but I learned how to be ruthless from you. How to see opportunities others miss. How to fight when everything says to quit." She met his eyes. "I took the worst parts of what you taught me and used them to build something better, so thank you. And goodbye." She left before he could respond. The closure felt different this time. Final. Complete. She was done with Marcus Vance in every way that mattered. Outside the prison, Kyle and Elena waited. She was 10 now, smart and stubborn, and already asking questions about taking over the family business someday. "You okay?" Kyle asked. "Yeah, I am." Arya took Elena's hand. "Let's go home." They walked through Ashwood, the city that had been her cage, her battlefield, her proving ground, and finally her home. Everything she'd fought for was here. The business, the reforms, the relationships, the life she'd chosen instead of accepting what was offered. It hadn't been easy. Nothing worth doing ever was, but it had been worth it. Every brutal choice, every desperate gamble, every moment of fear and doubt and determination, because she'd proven the fundamental truth that had driven her from that first night in the fight ring. You could lose everything and still rebuild. You could be betrayed and still trust. You could start with nothing and create something that mattered. You just had to be brave enough to refuse to break. And Arya had been exactly that brave. She'd survived, thrived, transformed not just herself but the entire frontier. And she'd done it by making one reckless choice in a moment of desperation and then choosing, every day after, to make it mean something. That was power, real power, the kind that lasted, the kind that changed everything. They walked home through the city Arya had claimed as her own, the family she'd built from impossible circumstances surrounding her. And for the first time in her entire life, Arya felt completely, absolutely, finally free. Not because someone gave her freedom, but because she'd fought for it, earned it, built it with her own hands from the wreckage of everything she'd lost. That was victory, true victory, and it was hers forever.